Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back on Saturday. We've got lots to talk about, lots of things to get into. Big show. Our featured story for tonight, I propose to Candace Owens. Okay, I'm good. Rate my impersonation, boys and girls. Rate it. What do you guys think in light of the accent deficiencies nonetheless? It's the mannerisms. That's what you chiefly got to get into. But jokes aside, this is the other Paul, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all very much for tuning in for what is truly quite an important stream. One of great importance because of the cultural moment. I like to pride myself on being one who tries to apply consistent Christian natural law, biblical principles to issues where they are most needed. Issues like this, where it's extremely divisive, extremely spicy, and there is at least one side in the church that is muddying things quite badly. Whether it be with World War II history, race, the Jews, so on and so forth. And as it turns out, we have all that bundled up into one in the person of Nick Fuentes, who is the subject for tonight's discussion. And so, fundamentally, what is the question to be addressed? Ultimately, it is simply, how should you, in a principled manner, go about assessing his character, assessing his work, so on and so forth? How do you think about him in a proper manner that is not slanderous, and where you're ultimately guided by what he actually says and what he actually does, rather than by cultural winds and waves in whatever direction? Because that is the ultimate problem we have on this matter with Fuentes. You either have many people like myself who actually understand what he's saying, what he's trying to say, may even agree with a lot of it, not with everything. Some may disagree with everything, just agree with everything he says fundamentally, but they may yet see that his conduct is bad. Some may excuse his conduct. And then there are others who are livid about his mere existence in the mainstream platform, because he's been around for many years, don't be mistaken. The issue is that he is being, as the word they love to use, platformed, which is absolutely hilarious because he's already massive. It's not like others are platforming him, so to speak, although in a sense that's true, I guess. They bring him to a new audience. It's a meaningless moral metric, though, and we may get onto that later on. But nonetheless, it's the problematic response. The bad response has been from many so-called Christians who all they see is Ben Shapiro's like clip compilation of Nick, whether by Ben directly or just seeing those clips out in the ether. And through those little clips, and without any of the context of Gen Z behavior, because that's critical here, they will form a full character profile, a full character assessment, and then see it appropriate to offer a public character judgment. Now, for Christians, we can't do that. We actually have a responsibility to give a fair and thorough assessment of what someone says, what someone does, if we are going to pass a judgment on their general character. It's one thing to look at individual statements someone makes and attack them just as individual statements. That's easy enough to do. But if you want to give a general attack on someone's character, that's not enough. And especially not 5-second clips, including ones where he's very obviously joking, even without the wider context. And that's going to be an important theme for tonight. Now, I wanted to, and by the way, actually, I'm finally able to test out my new little gadget here, the good old Stream Deck. And it has the StreamYard profile on it, which means I can change cameras, switch scenes and all that just by clicking these buttons, mute myself like this. You can't, hang on. Whoopsie daisies, I accidentally added a bookmark, and so I've got to actually have the StreamYard window selected. So if I press this button, I'm muted. Unmuted. And if I press this button, oy vey, where'd he go? How cool is that? So cool. And so with that, I was going to look at a few minutes of a particular video that exemplified this terrible attitude from a certain Christian content maker. The attitude of the guy who's not even himself a boomer. I think he's either late Gen X or early millennial, even though he does sound like a boomer in his voice very literally. But someone who exemplified genuinely slanderous, unresearched claims about Fuentes. And a big thing with this stream is that it's not just about Fuentes. What I try to make with my content of all kinds is that no matter the particular subject I'm addressing, the intent is that I am giving you all principles and tools that can be applied in other situations. So this stream on Nick Fuentes is not just on Nick Fuentes. And in fact, its ultimate intent is much wider than that. It is about how do you assess anybody's character, whether a private person or in particular public figures? How do you actually do that in a fair and critical and Christian manner? And I wanted to show a video from this bloke, the Dr. Alan Harrelson, because I saw that it was shared by John Harris. Ostensibly, he was recommending it. Basically, his video, what was it called? Response to the Gropers. He made something like 3 videos about Fuentes and the Gropers. And for terminology, for those who don't know, Groper is the name for someone who is consciously of Nick Fuentes' America First movement. And in particular, I'd argue that it's not just that they share the same beliefs, but they also have a particular loyalty towards Nick's person as well. So that's why I'd say, even though on the overall, politically, and this is a bit of a spoiler, I actually agree with almost everything Nick says, what he actually says, not out of context clips or jokes or whatever, but what he actually says, even though I would have that massive agreement with him, I am simply not a groper because I don't have any real meaningful loyalty to Nick. I like a bunch of his content and I cringe at a bunch of it as well, especially when he tries to go against the Reformation. Oh boy, he sucked the Kool-Aid on that one. But other than that, I wanted to show a video from this guy, a few minutes of it, to just exemplify the uncharitable boomer spirit of how not to interpret Fuentes, because it was absolutely terrible. But unfortunately, I can't do that. So really the TLDR of it is just that he said he saw this Nick Fuentes guy and he's very vulgar. He's a Nazi, a Hitler lover, and a racist. He opposes race mixing. He's an anti-Semite. Look at me with my pipe. I'm old stock Virginia. I'm totally not putting on this accent. Maybe he isn't. I don't think he is. He has a whole long list of videos. It does genuinely sound like he's putting on the accent, though. When you listen to my video, listen to any of his videos. Do give me your thoughts on that. Unfortunately, he took those videos down, like probably just by this morning, my time, because I had it queued up and I was rewatching one of them just last night. Before this, late last night. So for whatever reason, he decided I'm going to take those down. And what exactly was the reason? I have no clue why. But otherwise, 2 points of prolegomena before we properly get into this. First, this stream is going to have some naughty language. And not just because I'm going to be playing a few representative clips from Fuentes, but also possibly because I'm of myself. Because, hey, guys, I'm Australian. Half Anglo, white Australian, all the way to the First Fleet, and half Lebanese. So it's my culture, guys. It's my culture, and it's in my genetics as well. Fun fact. So you have to respect my way of life, the way of my people with the language. Not that I cavalierly drop S-bombs, F-bombs, all that, but when it's warranted. And actually, that will be something that's relevant for tonight's discussion because Nick's vulgarity is a key point of controversy. Now, with that said, before we truly begin, I want to recommend that people become... Oh, come on here. Nope, that's not it. Yeah, that's that. And then I got to add it back in. That people become a supporter on my website because unlike with YouTube or even Patreon and other services, the vast majority of what you send actually comes to me and not towards supporting mega corporations because it just uses a straight up Stripe card transfer while yet having the fancy aesthetics of tiered rewards. So become a supporter on my website. You get some cool benefits with that. One of them being that for Deacon rank and above, you get priority in Q&A segments. So do the YouTube super chatters. So if you give a super chat on YouTube, you will get priority in the Q&A, although a lot less of that actually comes to me. A lot of it goes to YouTube. I've read in the metrics somewhere between 30 and even 50% when you account all the different costs. So do become a supporter on my website. And for all those who are supporters, thank you so much for your support. The next supporter exclusive for Priest Tier and above, Commonplace's article will actually be coming up shortly after this stream. I apologize for the delay. I've been very busy on a number of different things, but the fruits of that will be showing in the near future. Now, with that said, we'll just jump right back into it. So if I may pull up my notes here, just so I know where I'm at, and if I can take a sip. Before that properly, actually, I'll say hi to people. Who do we have here? Wally Weston, hello, I'm ready. Good stuff. DoorDash Thomas, good to see you. We have the scholastic representation here. I'm curious to see your response versus inspiring philosophy and what are your memes response. I'm sure their response sucked ass, so mine's probably going to be better. As much as I respect, I say this again, I respect IP and his work. He does incredible work. But my word is politics is yikes. Vladia Kubets, let's go. Thank you very much. Matty, good to see you, mate. Very good to see you as usual. Good afternoon. You know you're going to get yes, you are going to get a very reasonable and balanced take. Now, to qualify that, balanced doesn't mean just the dead center. That's unfortunately what a lot of people think. And I'm not saying that you do think, Vlad, but in case anyone else does, people often think that balance means you give equal parts criticism and equal parts compliments to a subject matter. It's not that. That's not true, proper, principled balance. Real balance is that you approach the matter from consistent, true principles, and that could result in either overwhelming positivity, overwhelming negativity, or genuinely somewhere close to the middle. But you guys will see where that comes here. Pigachad, yeah. Because that's the ball of centrism, to go on a bit of a tangent for the moment. Centrism is essentially one side says, hey guys, let's eat this pile of shit. The other side says, let's not eat the pile of shit. The centrist says, hey guys, why don't we eat half the shit? Oh, we're so enlightened now. That's centrism, TLDR. And again, to reiterate, there's going to be some language in this stream, as has already been made evident. So I will also additionally say that if you have children around, put some headphones in. Anyway, a lot of people here. Dr. Harrelson, I think that's how you say it, Harrelson. Blah, 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 blah. We've got a few people here. Oy vey indeed, my dude. The voice. I know I can't get the voice yet. I know it's a very particular, higher pitched Chicagoan accent, but I can do that. I can get to that one day. Your American impression catch me off guard. Thank you very much. Nick Fuentes' impression sounds like a racist JFK. I'll take that. Hey, I'll take that one. Good general American accent. Thank you. Oh, man. Mario, good to see you, mate. I haven't gotten to watch any of this, but I love you, mate. We've only just started. I've just got onto some prolegomena. You like Nick. And hey, spoiler alert, people, I do as well with qualification. And actually, Mario, if you would like, I want to invite any of the other big YouTube boys, if they want to come on at the end of the stream, because I'm going to have like an hour or so going through my general case, and then I'm going to open up to other YouTube boys who want to join. So if you want to join, let me know, and I'll send you a StreamYard link when I do. Oh, boo, fake sell. This guy's a fake sell. Everyone call Mario a fake sell in the chat, all right? Unbelievable. Anyway, I must take another sip and then get to my notes. True, very true. Anyway, with that said, I'm going to go a brief TLDR of the career of Fuentes. And when I say brief, I mean really bloody brief. Anyone who's followed him for a good time long enough will know, okay, yes, this is brief. But I'm giving what is essentially just some essential context on who he is, where he's coming from. So Nick Fuentes, far right, quote unquote, Romanist political commentator. He's been active for close to a decade, essentially. And what he likes to talk about a lot is that he was inspired to do what he does, his political commentary stuff, by Trump's America First, Donald Trump's America First message. When he first came into the campaign season, the 2015 campaign season, and Fuentes saw him. Fuentes by then was quite a normie libertarian type of dude, free markets, capitalism. I condemn all this racism stuff, blah, blah, blah. You can even see that, I think, in his first proper episode of his podcast in 2017 or around then. But as he took the America First message seriously, he underwent something of a very, very significant ideological change to where now, and really for the longest time, for many years now, he's very explicitly outspoken Romanist, race realist. So he believes that the races are real, that it's good to preserve one's racial heritage. And for him in particular, that means white identity, white American identity. Also, he diagnoses as one of the central problems of American politics, but also by extension, global geopolitical politics, is essentially what he would call the transnational Jewish people. By that, he means, and we'll go into more detail of that later, and by that, he essentially means that Jewish identity, Jewish collective identity, particularly as expressed through the government of the State of Israel and its hold on the United States government, but not exclusively through that, but particularly through the State of Israel, that it has a stranglehold on American politics and that it has been used to the detriment of the American people, to white people generally, and for the benefit of the State of Israel and for Jews. Those are his big overall points. And ultimately what he wants to see is really the original message of Trump in America First. Trump now is very obviously compromised in, what's the term, 6 ways from Sunday or something like that, whatever the term is. He's obviously very compromised. The latest Epstein files dropped when he explicitly said they don't exist is a very obvious example of that, including one very concerning email that alleges someone had photos of Trump doing certain sexual activity with Bill Clinton. I won't go into detail, but essentially Trump, that him betraying his voters' desires on immigration, the H-1B issue, very pitiful illegal immigration, deportations, among many other things. He's become very critical of Trump because of that, but only because, to Fuentes, and I would actually agree with his take there, he was inspired by Trump's original message, and he simply took it to its logical extreme, and he stuck with that, whereas Trump went the opposite direction. So that is the basic overall of, again, extremely basic overall of his message. And I'm going to point people in multiple directions through this stream. One is my own testimony. So I actually watched Nick for a very long time, more than most people, I believe. I first encountered him in what's called the First Groyper War. Basically, he went to various Turning Point USA events hosted by Charlie Kirk and other people. Well, not him personally for the most part, but his followers, his fans. They went to those events and they pressed them with tough questions that the normie, libertarian, conservative Republican establishment did not want to address. Issues of race, of homosexuality, of Israel. And there's a lot of really, really, really funny clips. I'm not going to lie, really funny clips of people asking those questions. Probably the absolute golden standard is the guy who asked about the dancing Israelis, but in a way that was kind of veiled. Real OGs know what I'm talking about. If you don't believe me, just Google dancing Israelis. That was so funny. And Nick himself went crazy over that. But that's where I first learned of him. I heard of the Groyper War. I then learned of Nick. And I actually caught some of those gropings, as they call them, live myself. And then for a while, I'd watch him quite a bit. And then eventually I tape it off. I wouldn't watch him as much, but I'd always keep an eye out what he's doing, what he's up to. More recently, until a little bit before the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a little bit before that, I became a bit more regular, just out of curiosity, because I saw he was rising up again in popularity. His views were taking on more steam, and again, views which, for a large part, I actually agree with when you actually rightly understand them. That's the important thing. And so I was there before the Kirk assassination. Then that happened, and his popularity absolutely skyrocketed with that, because Charlie Kirk was, for all intents and purposes, the embodied human center of American conservatism. He is the guy, white man, white wife, white kids, Christian, highly conservative, very outspoken, and he would go to these hostile environments and debate people. And through that, he created an insanely wide and powerful infrastructure of student conservative movements within American universities and even outside of them, even online as well. Even though he was very, very normie, he was definitely wrong on a number of issues. And he and Nick became bitter enemies, essentially because of the Groper Wars and their completely opposite outlooks on what ought to be done politically. But nonetheless, Kirk created an amazing infrastructure in that way. And with that assassination, his person was gone. And so naturally people went, well, okay, who's going to take his place? And many people were drawn to the message and outlook of Fuentes because of that. That was the first real big bump recently. Excuse me, sorry, just stuffing my nose. Anyway, so that was the first big bump. The second big bump started not long after that, when he started to get interviewed by more and more mainstream people. So people like Patrick Bet-David, Glenn Greenwald, among others. He'd been on Alex Jones's show for many years at that point, so that wasn't new. But importantly, this is all well before the Tucker Carlson interview. But upon being interviewed by those more mainstream people, Glenn Greenwald, Patrick Bet-David, and others, being interviewed with them and having genuinely good and productive interviews, that is when his popularity started to increase. And then the big one dropped when he actually had the interview with Tucker Carlson. And that was massive for two reasons. One, they were actually bitter enemies before. They were mutually calling each other feds. Your vision sucks. No, your vision sucks, blah, blah, blah. It was really bitter. But then, however they did that over the phone, they made up and they agreed to an interview on Tucker Carlson's show, which is basically the most mainstream, non-mainstream conservative show out there. Insanely popular, outdoes cable ratings frequently. So when that happened, that's the second reason. So that's the first reason. It was massive because they were bitter enemies. Now they're amicable to some degree, although Nick's still critical of him. Then the second thing is obviously because of the scale of Tucker's show. Essentially, that was taken as the mainstreaming of Fuentes, which in many ways it absolutely was. And for those who actually watch Fuentes very frequently, he was very strategic in how he articulated his views. He didn't actually substantially change many of his views, but he did leave a lot back. He did pull back a lot of what he would normally say on his show for that audience, for that more mainstream audience of Tucker. And it clearly worked. His influence has exploded, basically, because of that. But also, as a result, it's basically started, but people say it started now, the current civil war in American conservatism and the Republican Party. It's really not the start of it. The start of it was when Nick essentially came into existence. Oh, heck, even before that, with the prior alt-right movement, as it's called, those guys with the Charlottesville March, with the tiki torches, the Jews will not replace us, and Richard Spencer, those guys. It really started with them, although they were, for all intents and purposes, crushed quite a bit. But Fuentes, with him getting on the scene and with him getting cancelled very early on, and that's some other important context there, he wanted to get into these mainstream circles. But essentially, as soon as he started criticizing America's position with Israel or questioning it, that's when he got basically nuked from all the circles, and that's what forced him underground, more or less. And that's where he grew and grew and grew and grew with Gen Z men, but also a number of women and even people of older generations. that's essentially how he was able to grow more or less uninterrupted. Yes, there'd be like leftist hit pieces every now and then against him. Some conservatives would try to attack him. But for the most part, there was a policy in mainstream conservatism, especially with Ben Shapiro, to just not address him. Don't name him. Don't cite him. Don't do any of that. He'll die off. Unfortunately, that didn't work. And with the Tucker interview, that is what forced a lot of these mainstream conservatives who knew of Fuentes but had a strategic policy of ignoring him to now explicitly address him. And that's where Ben Shapiro's clip series came in, where he basically said, okay, this guy, Nick Fuentes, take a look at this clip here. He's praising Adolf Hitler here. He's saying RKD, blah, blah, blah. Here's all these really bad things he's saying, blah, blah, blah. That was basically Shapiro's entire video. A big struggle session trying to ironically play off of the very leftist sensibilities that ostensibly him and his company Daily Wire and his allies have been trying to fight against. Out of context clips to try and rage bait people into condemn, cancel. Need to take another sip. Let's say, hypothetically, I actually am Ben Shapiro. I've got my yarmulke. Actually, where is my yarmulke? It's somewhere. Oh, well, somewhere. Darn, I wish I could pull that out. Oh, man, it would look so much better with my bald head, too. Darn it. For those who don't know, I actually have a yarmulke. And not just any yarmulke, but one that my mum bought for me as a souvenir from a mission trip to Israel. So it's got the Holy Land Jew touch. It's the special one, but I can't seem to find it around here. Oh, well, maybe another time. Anyway, that's where all this is headed. And again, for those who are Nick fans, you guys will understand that this is very much a TLDR, a heavy TLDR, but one that does get to the essence of where Nick has come from and essentially the basis of what he's come to believe. Now, with that said, I am now going to move to the next proper section here, and that is to lay out some basic principles for how to rightly assess a man. So really, if any part of this stream is worth clipping for anyone or recommending to someone else, maybe I'll go back to using the highlights channel again. I might put it up there. I'm just really bloody lazy. But otherwise, if any bit is worth clipping for this video, it's the basic standards of how to rightly assess a person. And before we get to that, we have DoorDash Thomas. Thank you for the $5. Rabbi Hornstein, Rabbi Shapiro. Truth nuke. I need to get a clip. I need to get a clip for that. But actually, no, I do have something else for you, DoorDash.
Impressive. Very nice. Just cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks.
Cool it, bro. Cool it. Thank you for that super chat, you absolute legend. But now we will get on to what I want to give as a set of principles. And these are principles for not just assessing Fuentes. Again, as I said at the start of this stream, I want this to be useful for more than just this situation. Anytime you encounter a controversial figure who claims to be Christian, they're rising, or even if they don't claim to be Christian, the virtue and the obligation of charity doesn't go away just because someone is not a Christian. Hey, look, bro, I'm just saying, if you're a real one, you won't need the early life. Anyway, no more distractions. If there's any more super chats between now and then, if they're questions, I'm going to save them to the end. But if they're just general statements, I'm going to save it till after this section. Anyway, as I said at the start, this is going to be applicable to more people than just Fuentes. It's not just him. These are principles for assessing anybody, the character of any person, particularly of public figures. And this is what you should do. Now, first and foremost, and this is quite particular to Fuentes, but also it applies to any public figures who are just generally divisive and they're very taboo, and there's wide social contagion around their name, around any association with them. This is applicable to them. And again, all of this is for people. If you don't want to get into this, if you don't want to have the obligation to do this level of due diligence, which will require some serious work on your part. If you don't want to have that, then morally, you cannot then go out and make public definitive claims about a person's character, about what they say and do. You can give opinions. If someone asks you, you can say, oh, well, I think this, I kind of think this, I lean this way. That's something else. That's just your current state of mind. But to give actual full-on objective judgments of someone, you have to go through this due diligence. You can't dodge it as a Christian. You don't have that liberty to look at a 5-second clip of someone giving rage bait and then form an entire character profile about them, just like what many people have done. Anyway, the first principle, most applicable to Fuentes and very controversial figures, is that when you want to investigate them, you need to very consciously purge your mind of the frame and the picture you have been given of that person by other sources, by mainstream sources, by other popular figures, people saying, oh, he believes this, oh, he does that. If you want to make an objective, fair, and Christian assessment of someone, you have to first purge your mind of that preoccupation. That's important because, as everybody should be able to grant, people, even a lot of people, even most people, can misrepresent a person. They can interpret him wrong. They could apply the wrong tools of interpretation to that person. That could skew their perception of him. To assess a person, you fundamentally have to go to what that person actually says and what he actually does. Not what other people say, not what other people claim. Oh, this guy said this about Nick. Oh, this guy said this and that. I was about to drop an F-bomb, but it's a bit early in the stream. Irrelevant. You cannot hold on to those preoccupations. You have to purge them from your mind. And so as a concrete example, with Fuentes, okay, let's say the common perception, oh, he's a Jew hater. Oh, he loves Hitler. He wants to bring back the Third Reich. He wants to like kill all the Jews or to put them all into camps and what have you. All these common perceptions that you have received of him, if you want to give a genuine objective Christian interpretation of him, you have to take those characterizations, purge them out, and just ignore them. Pretend they don't even exist. Because if you have those in your mind as you're assessing the person, what is inevitably going to happen? You are going to read little bits of evidence as you encounter them, and you are going to autofill them. You are going to automatically color them with those preconceived ideas, even if those ideas are not yet actually even present in the evidence, or even if they're not there at all, ever. So, for example, you may see a clip where Fuentes says, oh, this Larry Ellison, he's this Jewish guy who's loyal to Israel, and he's bought TikTok in order to protect the Jewish people from anti-Semitism, right, and suppress that from public speech. He says that a lot. He says that quite loudly and proudly. He's correct, but he says that a lot. Now, if you don't purge your mind of undue presuppositions, many people will automatically color that with, oh, he's pointing to this guy being a Jew. See, that's therefore evidence. He must want Larry Ellison dead. He must want to put him in a camp and blah 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 blah. Stuff that is not actually in anything he said. Nothing that Nick said in that statement. It's just automatically colored in because you've come to him with those preoccupations based on what other people, enemies of Nick, have said, or out of context clips, little bitty clips, not interpreted according to his wider library. So that's the first thing. Now, the second point, and this goes for basically everybody that you want to interpret, any figure, public, private, whoever. If you want to make a general character assessment of them, of their person, their views, so on and so forth, you have to watch a representative sample of their content, okay? And so this goes back to the clips issue. Looking at little Shapiro's clip compilation, Fuentes' greatest hits or whatever, the this you, little clips of that, that does not give you epistemic justification for a full character profile of Nick's person or his views with respect to the public person and public views. That doesn't do that. That's not justification. That is woefully insufficient. If you want to actually form that profile, you have to watch a representative sample of his content. Now, what can that look like? That can look in multiple ways. The most brute force idea is you literally watch every single episode of his show, America First, and all of his interviews. Very unrealistic for most people, but I'm sure there's a number of people who have done that. There's other ways to do it, nonetheless. You can look at the list of his episodes and you can pick out one or more, like a small chunk of randomly selected episodes from over the years. So across the years, but a little random sample, and you can take from that. That's another thing you can do. In my opinion, the best thing to do, actually, no, before that, you can also think of, okay, what are the most consequential events that relate to these controversial issues, race, Jewish people, Christian nationalism, so on and so forth. What are the most consequential political events that relate to those topics? You think of those events when they happen, and then you find Nick's streams and videos and interviews on those topics. That's what you can do. And that is where you can find much more representative listings of his views. Now, despite all that, here's the tricky part. Nick and any other content maker, they're not ones to fully re-articulate the full nuances of their views that they genuinely hold with every single episode. And so even when you do that, you may find one thing where he says this and it's serious, and he's not joking about it, but it sounds one way, but actually it relies on context of what he said elsewhere. So that can naturally make things a bit more tricky. But it also shows that if you want to make that public character assessment of the person, you have a lot of work to do. You actually have a big burden of proof. You have to satisfy conditions. And so one of the most helpful things you can do is to go to people who are big fans of his or who've watched a lot of his stuff and just ask him, hey, where has Nick talked about this, that, the other? Ask them to bring you some sources if they can. And ideally multiple people, not just the one person, to account for any errors and omission and what have you. So that's what you should do. Watch a representative sample of what the person has actually bloody said and not what other people say, and not tiny little clips, whether they're endearing clips like the many clip accounts of Fuentes where they share what he says and it's like this really cool based quote or whatever. Not those, or the struggle session clips by Shapiro and friends. So that's what you have to do. You have to actually watch what the person says. You have to watch their content. You have to actively seek out where they fully articulate something, including when you come to a point where, okay, this guy said this on this issue. I don't see full clarity on what he means by this word or this phrase, because it could be interpreted multiple ways. One way that's more benign, one way that's really bad. And then so when you do that, you simply keep going through his content, see if he gives clarification somewhere. And as it happens, Nick has given clarification many, many, many times in his content, only because, bluntly put, many people just don't follow these basic rules of how to interpret someone. And we're going to see a few of those clips today. Jeremy, thank you for the super chat. Welcome to No Clipped Quarter November. Thank you very much for the 5 Australian shekels, my friend. Say, what's your last name, mate? I'm kidding. Maybe. Point number 3 is, well, actually, I pretty much already said point number 3. If you want to see his particular views on an issue, actively search out, and again, for Fuentes or any other public figure, if you want to see their views, their full views on a particular issue, you need to seek out specific episodes, specific streams, videos, where they actually articulate that. And so for that, the internet is obviously most helpful. I mean, not even most helpful, it's essential because all the content is on the internet. But even just a simple search, whether on Google or even better, on Nick's own main channel on Rumble, which has been going on for around 4 years now. So it's not the entirety of his catalog, but you can find his other videos on other platforms. And also he likes to promote as his second level supporter tier, America First Plus. At $30, you get access to his entire video catalog from the beginning. And there's apparently an AI powered search thingo. And so if that sounds like what I think it sounds like, it basically looks at all the transcripts of all of his streams from the beginning, and you can find what you want. So really, if you want to have the best opportunity to find what Nick says and how his views have changed or not changed over time, that's really where you want to go, more or less. But otherwise, his Rumble channel is very good for finding that, because he has basically his main topics in the titles of both his streams and his clipped segments. So that's where you can go to. And again, that applies to any other person. If you want to assess, let's throw a random name out there, John Harris, Conversations That Matter. You want to find his views on the Confederacy, on slavery, search his video archive, search his YouTube. You want to learn the views of Doug Wilson, search his canon videos, read his books. You want to learn the views and assess the character of, I don't know, who's another random person? Well, who's like a kosher right, or even just a straight up libtard guy? Matthew Vines, if anyone remembers him, the longtime Christian gay activist dude who likes to argue that men getting on with men is not sinful. If you want to learn about his actual character and his actual views, you don't just go to the anti-Matthew Vines apologists like Robert Gagnon, who does genuinely great work on the issue, and what they say about him. You go to what Vines actually says. You go to his videos, you go to his books, etc., etc. That's what you actually do, okay? And step number 4, again, I think I've actually already said this, when you're watching Fuentes' content or anybody's content that you're trying to assess, when you hear them mention keywords or key topics where the public persona is at, oh, he has the bad view on this, he has the bad idea. Again, those secondary preconceptions that you should be getting out of your mind there. When he mentions that issue, you have to simply take, okay, what is he actually saying here? And then you take what he actually says and you don't impute to him what he is not saying. That's simple. Okay? So again, that prior example with Larry Ellison, because he points to Larry Ellison being an ethnic Jew and that he has, because of that particular loyalty to the state of Israel, and he tries to suppress white American expression in favor of that. You read that for what it is, for what Nick is saying. You don't add to that, okay, therefore he must want to put him in a camp and kill him and make his skin into lampshades or whatever. Because that's not said there, nor even implied. You look at what Nick says, you look at what any public figure says, and you take from that. And you build a coherent picture from that, and not what from other people say or your own preconceptions. So that's basically that. Now, it was at this point I was going to show that video from Alan Harrelson, who does the exact opposite of this proper series of steps of how to assess someone's character. I was going to show that, but unfortunately, again, he's taken down the videos. So, I can't show that. But nonetheless, I'm just going to look at my thingo yet. I'm just looking at my chat right now, or rather my Twitter chat, just to see if anyone was going to join afterwards. Nobody yet. No problem. Again, if any fellow YouTube boys they want to join, just message me, ideally on Twitter through a Twitter DM, or a comment on my shared video posts, and I'll give you the StreamYard link. Now, we're going to move on a bit more. Here's some additional final context to understand for Fuentes. He is Gen Z, my generation. In fact, he doesn't look like it, but he's actually a year older than me. He's born in 1998. I'm born in 1999. I have the superior Lebanese genetics for the beautiful facial hair. Unfortunately, it browns my skin a little bit, but oh well, we can't be all perfect. So, because of that, there's a particular way of talking and of communication and of humor in particular. So with him being Gen Z and very unabashedly Gen Z white male, he has very often very dark and bombastic humor, which may yet, and often is not, reflective of what he actually believes. At most, it only shows that he doesn't treat the issue as sacrosanct. So, for example, he'll have those clips where he says, "Oh, I'm Team Hitler," and "Hail Hitler," and all that stuff. And if you're a Gen Z man, if you have grown up in the culture of how we communicate, how we talk, even just in the out of context clips, but especially if you watch the wider streams, you can just tell, even without him saying so, that he's obviously having a yarn. He's joking around, because that's how we operate. To give some particulars of what that looks like, we can just tell as Gen Z guys and Gen Z men in the chat, possibly even also younger millennials can relate. You can just tell that there's points where he gives more exaggerated language, more verbose wording, more sharp and shocking choices of words, and also with his intonation, and even if he chooses to smile as he's saying it, and you can just tell with all that, okay, what he's saying here, he's joking. Okay, he's not giving an unironic position. And that's basically with everything he says, where he's like, "Oh, I praise Hitler or Team Hitler, and Hitler is really cool, really effing cool." He's very obviously having a yarn. We can just tell as Gen Z. We don't need to explain it. And it's hard. It's quite hard to explain it to these older generations. It's just a matter of, look, you're a boomer. You don't understand. Shut up and trust us. Okay? That's pretty much what it is. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that, therefore he's exempt from Christian rules of decorum and cleanliness of speech. He's obviously not. That's actually going to be the last thing I address tonight. And so because of that, excuse me, tell us in the chat if we love our mums, guys. Who loves their mum? Let us know in the chat. Anyway, so because of that, and actually, no, in addition to that, and really because of that, yeah, I got the call. I literally got the call. Yes, I did, boys. I got my call. So anyway, the call absolutely won't affect the content at all. So here's why you should all support Israel. Now, second, on top of the Gen Z humor, and really on the foundation of this, he operates, Fuentes, in his speech, how he articulates things, and many Gen Z men, he operates outside the social norms of polite society and post-war consensus speech. So what do I mean by that? Well, by that, again, the aforementioned dark humor, vulgar speech, etc. But in terms of the substance, it also means that he will state certain spicy views of his without the normal qualifications, the majority of the time, that one would expect in polite society. So not only does he have those views that are outside the pale of the post-war consensus, but he'll even in the social context, he's not in the social context where he feels the need to qualify them, where one normally would in our social context. So, for example, when Fuentes says that he finds Hitler fascinating, he said that, not in a joking way, but in an unironic way. And he said that actually in a very recent clip, which I'm going to show. I don't know. Well, it was in the same segment. I don't know if it's in the clip I gave, but the clip actually gives a lot more context. So when he says that he finds Hitler fascinating or Stalin fascinating in the Tucker interview, people extrapolate from that, because of that basic little kernel idea, he finds Hitler fascinating as a historical figure. Therefore, he must be a Hitler admirer and a full-throated national socialist. He wants to genocide lesser races, so on and so forth. All of that social package that I mentioned before about the presuppositions that you have to drop when you assess a person like Fuentes, that is the social paradigm of the modern public, of the post-war consensus world, that because he says one little positive thing about Hitler or that he likes something about him, therefore he must have this full-orbed support and allegiance to Adolf Hitler and his ideology. That's the modern context. Minimally, what you need to do in our context is the most really you can say without raising too many eyebrows is, well, the crazy thing with Hitler is that he was a really, really good speaker. He could give public speeches that whipped up the crowd. He was very good with that. And then even just saying that will get people going, why are you saying that? Hey, Goy, why are you saying that? Are you an anti-Semite? No. Maybe not to that point. But when the person says that, they'll then qualify that with, oh, but obviously he used that to bring about the worst evils in human history. He was totally evil. He used his rhetoric to create the great evil racism in Germany, so on and so forth. That's the expected social response in our modern world. Nick, even though he is not a National Socialist, even though he does not love Hitler, and I'm going to show a key clip to prove that, and there's not just one, by the way, but it's throughout his whole career. Anyway, not only is he not that, he's not those things, but he doesn't care for the modern social norms of how you are to approach that topic. And so he will happily say without qualification, he is fascinated by Hitler. He's fascinated by Stalin, by Genghis Khan, so on and so forth. He'll talk about these people because fundamentally, he doesn't hold the same social and, if you will, religious position on those figures as other people do, as wider society does. And so when people from our society, from our social context, imbibed with the post-war consensus, when they say Nick say these things, they will immediately assume things about him that he actually does not believe. So that's a key point. That is a huge, huge key point. In other words, Nick's rhetoric is basically, imagine Doug Wilson's No Quarter November, sprinkle in a bit extra far right, and then imagine it's all year. It's not just November. It's not just restricted to one time. Nick Fuentes is No Quarter November all year. He says just directly what he believes without qualification basically all the time. Sometimes he does give qualifications when he feels the need to, but most of the time he won't. He expects people to simply take him for what he is saying and not to assume he's saying what he is not saying. That is the absolute key for understanding Fuentes. Now, with that said, there's been a number of moments where Nick was genuinely not clear enough on a certain issue, where he seemed to have said one thing in the past, but then at some other point he says something that on its face genuinely sounds different. And it's not a matter of, well, if you read it in the context of that, it's a matter of, well, actually, no, they seem to be saying two completely separate things. So there's been points where Nick, a classic Chicagoan, says things which seem to be opposite. Maybe they are. Maybe he has had a genuine mind change on an issue, or maybe he was just genuinely unclear. That can happen. That happens with many people. You have to be able to account for that. $2 from JRR Got Memes. Thank you very much, mate. My client studied him to improve presentations. Yeah, okay. That's something I'll say. I'll take off the historian cap for a second. Nick Fuentes is genuinely one of the greatest living orators around. I genuinely believe that. Given his age and his ability to speak off the cuff, virtually unscripted, night after night, with pretty much no stammering and all that. And he's genuinely very persuasive. So I've genuinely looked at myself, okay, how does Nick do that? How does he talk like that so well? And I've tried to take cues from him. You may have noticed, if you look at how I'm talking right now in this stream, if you compare it to a stream of mine, say like a year ago, 2 years ago, in those times, I was talking a lot faster. I was stammering a lot more. I was a lot less articulate. Whereas now I very deliberately, because of seeing, hey, Nick is really good at talking, I want to emulate that. And I'm not obviously fully there yet. But if you've noticed, I've deliberately taken on his qualities as a speaker. So really, two the key things I've observed from how he speaks is, one, he's very slow compared to most other people, which means that he's thinking of his words much more ahead of time, much more in advance. I've sought to emulate that. And I do that all the time now. I stammer a lot less. I retract my words a lot less because I am speaking a lot slower at a moderate pace, at a moderate and articulate pace, which allows me to think further ahead about what I'm going to say. The second thing is that he pauses quite frequently. You can notice that in his streams. He'll have a string of words, pause. String of words, pause. And as you may notice, I have done that a fair bit in this stream. You may have noticed it. I've done it just then. And again, so on and so forth, you know. I do that a fair bit because that also adds to the ability to think about what you're going to say next, but in terms of larger blocks, what's the next general point? Because if you're speaking in just a continuous stream of consciousness, it's very easy for you to turn into a rambler. That's happened to me a lot in older streams. But now I'm learning how to not ramble by momentarily taking stops in what I'm saying, quickly in like a split second reassessing, okay, have I said what I needed to say on this point? If yes, okay, what's the next point? Let's move on. That's what I do. That's what I like to do. So, again, putting aside that thing, thank you for that super chat. Putting aside all that, that is the ultimate key to understanding Fuentes. That's the key thing you must understand when you start. He is operating in a Gen Z paradigm of humor, where they're willing to say a lot more dark and edgy things that do not actually reflect what they genuinely believe in all of its nuance. But also, even when they do talk about substance, he is perpetual no quarter November. He'll say what he believes without qualification, and he will expect the viewer to simply take him for what he is saying and not to interpret him according to what he is not saying, according to what you assume he is saying. And so with that, I'm actually going to load up the first of a few clips that I have here where he really best exemplifies and really best states this. This is actually in a very recent stream of his. Specifically, well, the stream itself wasn't called this, but if you go to his Rumble and if you go to the videos section, because he clips out the larger segments of his streams into individual videos, he has a video called "It's Time to Demythologize the Holocaust." And this is specifically, it wasn't even a main topic on the stream at that time. It was in response to a super chat and where he brought up Dave Smith, who's otherwise they're very much on board with each other. But Dave Smith was basically saying, yeah, Fuentes, you're good and all that, but you should like drop the Hitler stuff, blah, blah, blah. You should qualify yourself. You should tell people what you mean, explain yourself, blah, blah, blah. And Nick's basically saying, no, stuff you. Here's why I'm not doing that. So... Excuse me, I had to take a drink. Nick has also pulled back a bit while keeping his message on point. Yeah, exactly. No, that's a key point. That's because he recognizes his position now. Anyway, I'm going to share my first clip, which I have downloaded. Share a tab or a screen instead. Far out. Okay, fine. So screen 2. Also share system audio. So this clip goes for something like 7 or 8 minutes. So I'm just going to play it. I'll be in the corner, blah, blah, blah. And when it ends, and this clip is very important because it's basically Nick's micro manifesto of how he talks and what he actually believes, particularly on this issue, but also just generally how he talks, how he operates. And he basically says what I'm saying. And this was a very recent clip. Yes, this is like a week or two ago. But if you actually look at his prior content, and he actually cites an interview he did with Alex Jones from 2 years ago or something, where he says the same thing. But if you just look at his content and understand it in that light, you know that he's basically always been like this. This isn't some new cope to get in the good graces of the mainstream. This is just how he always is. Now, again, there's some naughty language here, and I chose not to censor it, except for his use of the N-word at one point. Other than that, there's naughty language. So again, I have to emphasize, if you're listening with children, keep your headphones in and keep them on for the rest of the stream, because again, I do not preclude myself from using spicy language when I feel the need for it. Anyway, let's play.
And so if you ever walk off that ledge a little bit, it's like you're afraid you're going to lose your whole thing. But to some degree, you got to admit, dude, he's painted himself into a Nazi corner that's like dude, this is going to turn off a lot of people if you can't find a way to go, okay, I don't mean that, because that is crazy.
Like what? What have I ever said? What is the craziest shit? I don't like this whole like, but you gotta admit, you said some crazy shit. There's two categories of things I've said on my show. Things that are jokes and things that are true. And the things that are jokes. And everybody knows that. And the things that are true are true. And what have I said about Hitler? I said on the Alex Jones show many years ago, a few years ago, I said, I'm not a National Socialist and I'm not a Hitler supporter or worshiper. I've said, but Hitler does not occupy my mind in the way that it does with these histrionic pro-Israel Jewish people. I said, because my moral universe is Christ and the devil, not Hitler and the Jews.
Quick pause there. Yeah, that's that. The existence of this clip, a very easy to find one, and one that does actually reflect his stance for, like, since the beginning, essentially. Well, at least until he got awakened on the Israel issue. Before then, he was just a normie libertarian. Anyone who's claiming, oh, Nick's a Nazi, he's literally a Nazi, he calls himself a Nazi, as Ted Cruz did, that person is either deliberately lying, or more likely, they have thought that they don't have the obligation to do the due diligence of actually looking at what does the man say for himself? What does he actually say about himself, about what he believes? And this really is an expose on many such people. People like Harrelson. That guy, again, I wish I could show his videos where he just absolutely, I'm about to say something quite inappropriate, but basically just a big boomer-reeing session where he doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know what Nick actually believes. The same, and I'm going to say it because I like John. I'm very friendly with him. I hope I'll collaborate with him sometime or something. John Harris is similar. He has more or less said, as far as I remember, that Nick's a Nazi. Nick's a Nazi supporter. Nick's a Nazi, Hitler admirer, blah, blah, blah. Okay, explain this. Anyway, we're going to continue because he says a lot more. And actually things which I'm going to say are pretty much my same mission, but I'll explain.
Okay. My moral universe is that we're Christian and our adversary is the devil. And Hitler, as far as we are concerned, is another in a long list of brutal tyrants, of which there have been many over the years. Stalin was brutal. Mao was brutal. Pol Pot was brutal. And people talk about, well, what about the gas chambers? Well, to the extent that that's real, I find that hard to believe, but to the extent that's real, there have been atrocities committed and genocides committed.
Denial! Holocaust denial!
In all times and all places. Let's acknowledge why Hitler casts the long shadow. Because that confers a political benefit upon Jews. That's why. It functions as myth. It's myth making, which is to say they have created, and there is, don't kid yourself, there has been some artistic liberties taken with this to create this narrative that Hitler is the most evil man ever, and he tried to destroy the Jews, and that is why we have to have Holocaust museums everywhere, and we can never talk about white people, and we can never talk about Jews, and we can never, because we don't want another Holocaust. The post-World War II order was created contra Hitler for a reason. Let's acknowledge that. Whenever anybody says, how about white people are pretty impressive, huh? Hitler, Nazi. Whenever somebody says, gee, America kind of was a white country, now it isn't. Hitler, Nazi. These Jewish people, they're pretty rich and powerful. What's up with that? Hitler, Nazi. Why do you think that is? In part, we have an open borders doctrine because of the Nazis. That's what it's based on. The whole point is, why do we have an open society? Because they said that's how we prevent another Hitler. Why do we have open borders? Why do we have pluralism? Why do we have tolerance? Why do we have all these things? To prevent the rise of a Hitler. Authoritarian personality was the same thing. We can't have masculine men. We can't have patriarchy. We can't have We can't have racial solidarity. We can't have any of these things because that would cause the rise of another Hitler. And that's all I've said about the subject, which is we need to demythologize Hitler, demythologize the Holocaust. I've said, sure, maybe the Holocaust happened the way they said it did. Maybe it didn't. Who fucking cares? Why is that like dogma? Why is it dogmatic? The Holocaust happened exactly this way or else. Is anything else like this? Why is it that the swastika is worse than the hammer and sickle? Why is it worse to be called a Nazi than a communist? This is myth making. We have to demythologize this stuff. We want to have a country without having to explain why it's not Hitler, without this appeal to, anti-Hitler or whatever. So people say, look, I'm not pro-Hitler. I don't care about Hitler. And because of that, they say, I worship him. I admire him. I'm a Nazi. I'm very clear. I'm America first. I'm a nationalist. I'm a Christian. My program is I want to end mass migration. I want mass deportations. I want a government informed by Christianity. I want to decouple from Israel. I want industrial policy. Like this is what I talk about on the show. But because I don't have this mythological, I don't observe this mythological religion of Hitler and the Holocaust, they say I'm a goose-stepping Nazi. I'm Catholic. I'm a Catholic American born in 1998 in the United States of America. But if you don't observe the dogma of Hitler and the Holocaust, they say, oh, you're this, that, and the other. And that's the point. Now, to the extent that I make jokes about Hitler, or we say, all my Nazis, Heil Hitler. To the extent that we do that, it is basically to treat this in a sacrilegious way. It is to blaspheme this religion. It is to destroy the sacred cow, the idol of the Holocaust. That's the point of joking about it. But the things that I've said in a serious way don't need to be taken. I've never said anything serious I would take back. I've never said crazy shit that isn't obviously a joke, that isn't obvious edgelord, we're trolling, it's a meme, it's whatever. And so when Dave says, oh, well, what about all this fucking crazy Nazi shit? It's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
So the grace period is over. Okay. I mean, realistically, there's never been an excuse for people to, unironically, Christians no less, to openly declare Nick's a Nazi, he's a National Socialist, blah, blah, blah. That excuse has never been there, because everything he's said there is basically just a distillation of what he's always done, what he's always said, and likewise of what he has never done and never said. So the excuse was never there, but it's extra not there now, okay? If you want to find it, again, I'm a sources guy, video or stream bibliography down below, the full segment where that's from, you can watch. I have it linked. So in light of just that little bit, anybody saying that all that stuff about Nick, basically, shows you that either they are liars or they have utterly failed to do the basic due diligence that is required by them as a Christian and by natural law as a rational being. They have failed that. They have absolutely failed that. Now, and actually, this is actually a good example of this. Some will say still, oh, but Nick, you still shouldn't make those jokes. Still shouldn't make those jokes, blah, blah, blah. There's the prudential argument for that. Fair enough. I'm sure Nick understood that when he's making those jokes, people were going to circulate those, take him out of context, and was going to heap a lot of shit on his head. Absolutely. That's on him completely. Nonetheless, I see a lot of people say things like this when they're confronted with that evidence, as if that somehow absolves their earlier claims. No, it fucking doesn't. Sorry. No, I'm not saying you're necessarily saying that, scripture, reason, tradition, but other people who say the same thing. Sorry, if you want to say that his jokes are off color, that they're bad, or at least they're imprudential and he's responsible for his own cancellations, fair enough. Make those arguments. That's not the same as saying, oh, he actually holds those views. He is actually in sin for holding certain views. Completely different. And if you've made such accusations of Nick or other figures who've done the same, like me, for example, because I'm about to say why I sympathize a lot with this clip, you have to repent. Simple as that. It's as simple as that. Now, another reason for why I love this clip, and this is really a little bit beyond the scope of the stream, because it goes into a particular matter and not just Nick himself, but his whole spiel there about how he's essentially just trying to demythologize World War II history, the received narrative of that. Not that he's positively pro-Hitler or pro-Holocaust or whatever. He just doesn't care, and he wants to make that a public thing, that we just stop caring about that anymore and deciding our public policy and cultural organization along those lines. And here's the thing, another proof, another show that people who claim him of being a national socialist or a white supremacist and blah, 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 another proof that people who claim these things don't actually know him is the fact that Nick is basically hated by the actual extreme national socialist, white supremacist organization, basically the more full-on white identity movements. A lot of those guys hate Nick. They hate him because they think he's too friendly with other races, that he thinks that we can ally with people in other races, that he's not explicitly national socialist, that he's still a committed Catholic, so on and so forth. People who don't know that controversy show that, okay, you just don't know what you're talking about on this. I'm sorry. Blah, 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 blah. And Death by Troll here, he has a good point. Is the Armenian genocide used to destroy my country and flood it with Muslims and Indians? Is it used to funnel billions to Israel, or Armenia in this case, while my own people drown in their country? Is the Cambodian killing fields used as an excuse to wipe out white people? Exactly. That's exactly it. And so, again, to take it outside of the scope of the stream, I'm with the overall of what Nick said, except for his suspicions on the Holocaust narrative. I don't have like an active suspicion on it. I'm just very deliberately agnostic on it because I don't want to take for granted what mainstream history, TV, high school, Schindler's List, what they've all told me. I don't want to take that for granted. But it also means I'm not actively revisionist. So putting that to a side, pretty much everything Nick said there is on point, in my humble opinion. Because I've had that same mission since the end of 2023, when I first made my post that it is okay for Christians to question or even outright deny the World War II narrative in principle, because that is not a proposition of natural law or of divine revelation. These are secondary historical contingent facts that are not at all whatsoever correlated to the Christian faith. One can be a completely faithful Christian and in principle deny that there was any mass killing. Whether that's historically true, whether that person is historically competent, is a distinct matter. And so in light of that, my mission for a while has basically been to do what Nick is doing, demythologize these things, stop making them tenets of the Christian religion, because they're bloody not. And when people make tests of orthodoxy, I know numerous cases of men, both that have happened publicly, but even in private that aren't public, of men who've basically been subjected to struggle sessions over, do you affirm Hitler was a bad guy, the Holocaust, oy vey, struggle sessions over those things, where it's like, what the fuck does that have to do with my confession as a Christian? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So why am I being questioned on that? Ipso facto, what that demonstrates, and it's beyond the church, obviously, the fact that it's infected the church is extra disgusting, but it is all over the regular culture as well, and it's being knocked down pretty quickly, to be clear, and that's a very good thing. But nonetheless, until a few years ago, this was culturally ubiquitous. You had to uphold these tenets as if they were dogma, as if they were religion, and in many spaces you still do have to. How do you explain that except as a religion? And it's not the Christian religion, it is Holocaustianity. That's what it is. And we are Christians, we do not affirm that as dogma. Even if it happened on every single point of what the received narrative said. Even if every single point of the received narrative was correct, which they could be, absolutely, even if that was all true, it doesn't follow that you as a Christian are obligated to believe and uphold it as a Christian, and that you're in heresy, you're in sin or whatever for just not believing it or not even putting that much stock in it at all. That's ridiculous. So that's why that clip in particular is one I really like from Nick. The fact that he's made that much more explicit, the why behind his cavalier behavior around the topic. Because that's basically the same for me. It is a false religion that we as Christians should be blaspheming. And as Nick said, our dichotomy, our paradigm is Christ versus the devil, not Hitler versus the Jews or Hitler versus the vague liberal good. You know, that's not how we operate. The fact that Hitler has taken the place in society of the devil, the fact that people are much more squeamish about being called a Nazi versus being called satanic. Most people, when you call them satanic, they'll think you're just exaggerating. They'll laugh that off because that's just some ridiculous, funny word. But if you call someone a Nazi, whoa, okay, we'll pump the brakes. We got to address something here. What does that tell you about the world we live in? What does that tell you? Anyway, I won't harp on much about that because I have an entire book on this coming. The book is in fact done. It is actually, you know what? I'm going to look it up for you guys right now because it's not yet out. Blah, 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 blah. And right here, okay. Blah, 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 blah. I'll share my screen if the button works. Hey, LeMayo, right there. Beautiful, right there. So from Sacra Press, this is my coming book on the right to dissent, where I basically go through the whole principle of how do we discern what doctrines Christians must believe versus those things which we can disagree on, both on the level of divine revelation and natural law. This book is coming soon, I'm told, in Sacra Press. Again, it is done. The manuscript's there. It's just a matter of editing. So, keep an eye out for that. I will be spamming it everywhere when it's out. And extra good news, actually, is that when it's out, I actually have a policy with books I want to publish. For every single book I publish, after a short amount of time, like for this case, 3 months, I'll release the whole PDF for free. I'm a quasi-Dorian principle guy that way. I don't believe in intellectual property, straight up. So I've made sure that it's going to be Creative Commons. Initially, it'll only release in physical format to encourage sales. But then after 3 months, the book will come out in a PDF format for free on my website. Anyone can get it, share it whenever. Yes, it was going to be released in May or June, but there were many delays and what have you, personal life and blah, blah, blah. But it has been done. It's actually been done for a while now. It's just there's the editing process and the publisher, Sacra, Cody Justice. There's a lot of other books he's working on as well. So, it's taking a bit of time. Anyway, with that said, look out for that book. I give it that's basically my full breakdown on that issue. But anyway, long digression there. Let's get back to Nick. That clip really says it all on how you should look at Nick. He explains it in his own words, how to properly look at him. And yes, denial of the Nazi accusations, blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. He just doesn't, it's not that the problem is with the paradigm itself, where people expect either, if you say anything positive about Hitler, okay, you have to decide, okay, do you affirm that Hitler's a bad guy, Holocaust's bad, Holocaust real, or are you an evil denier? Are you a Nazi? Are you the new Satan? That's the paradigm. And the expected response from that social paradigm is that you come out full-fledged, yeah, bro, hail Hitler and all that jazz, or you clearly, definitively, and loudly say, no, I condemn Hitler, I condemn the Holocaust, it happened, it was bad, oy vey. That's the expected response of our paradigm. That's the programming of most people. And so when Nick doesn't operate by that, the immediate assumption from the NPCs of our world is that, oh, he must be a Hitler lover, a Holocaust denier, so on and so forth. Now, he does question the mainstream account, but again, Christians can do that. Doesn't matter. But importantly, it doesn't actually follow. Just the social programming that exists is illogical and a source of industrial scale, or rather an industrial scale source of slander. Because just in the basic realm of logic and human language, just because someone doesn't say something or doesn't condemn something doesn't therefore mean that they affirm it or they like it. As Nick himself made clear in that clip, it's rather because he transcends that paradigm, and Christians should all transcend that paradigm. In his own words, Hitler should be treated like any other brutal tyrant in history. The way we speak about Genghis Khan, the way we speak about Julius Caesar. And you know what? Genghis Khan's a great example of this. If I was to say right now, and you know what? I will say it unironically, Genghis Khan was an incredible military leader, absolutely crazy that way, huge, incredible, impressive acts, one of the greatest conquerors in history, someone to be studied in that way. Now, when I said that, and I do genuinely mean that, did any of you get this weird squeamish feeling in your stomach? Or did your heart skip a beat because of, whoa, man, that's really bad, you shouldn't say that? I'm pretty certain none of you had that feeling. But hang on a second, why is that? Because if you know the mainstream history of Genghis Khan, what is commonly assumed, what is commonly granted about his campaigns, about his warfare, he was probably worse than the mainstream account of Adolf Hitler and of the National Socialists. His whole campaign, he basically pioneered strategic level psychological warfare. How did he do that? He would conquer a city with his army, and he would give a quota to all the groups in that army, like what, the squads or the platoons or whatever the precise, because there's particular names. I'm trying to think of the equivalent. He would give quotas for his men. You have to go and kill X amount of people in that city. Genocide. His campaign, his military campaign was one of genocide. And it was very simple. He would approach a city. They would either surrender immediately or they would be genocided. He single-handedly brought an end to what is normally called the Islamic Golden Age because he absolutely curb-stomped was it the Abbasids, I believe, the Abbasid Caliphate, or one of the later ones. I forget which one. And biological warfare. He did use biological warfare as well. Just look up any documentary, any book, even primary sources on what Genghis Khan did. Yeah, I'm a neo-Mongol, guys. Guys, I'm a neo-Mongol. We must secure the existence of the steppe and a future for Mongoloids. That's me, boys. That's me. But seriously, look at that. Look at what he's done in his campaign. Truly brutal, truly evil. Probably an act of God, frankly, as judgment. Even what he did with his campaign against China, against his initial campaign against the Chinese, human shields and what have you, truly brutal and evil stuff. And yet, with all that, you can say just fine, oh, I appreciate this about Genghis Khan. He was kind of brutal here, but I otherwise like about all these other things he did. His innovations, his strategic brilliance, the inclusion of the stirrup or whatever with horses and that. His mobile warfare of horse archers and all that, really, really cool. You can say all that. Nobody will bat an eye. But why? There is functionally no difference, given mainstream accounts, between Genghis Khan and Adolf Hitler. Zero. Absolutely none. They were both, in the mainstream accounts, incredibly brutal tyrants. Genghis Khan himself had a material impact on the human population of the earth, more so than Hitler, given the difference in population differences. Why? What is the principle that? By what principle are you allowed to lambast someone for not giving a fully qualified, I repudiate Adolf Hitler, but not for anyone who says that for Genghis Khan or for Julius Caesar? He basically committed genocide in Gaul. or for Augustus, his successor, his functional successor, with, for example, his prescriptions, the proscriptions he gave in the city of Rome. And for those who don't know, proscriptions in ancient Rome were basically the Roman government. They would put out a public list of names of people who were proscribed. And by proscribed, it meant that their life and property were forfeit. Anyone could kill them and could take a portion of their property, and the rest of it had to go to the Roman state. Essentially, legalized anarchy and mass murder. Look up, who's the historian? Was it Livy? I think it's Livy's account of Augustus's, the second triumvirate's proscriptions against the enemies of Caesar, of Julius Caesar. Look up that account. It is horrific. I actually posted a big excerpt of it on my Twitter a while ago, so maybe you can find it there. It was horrible. Children were targeted. Children were put on the proscription list. They were murdered and they were butchered. Oh, but it's fine if we talk positively about Augustus. Why? What's the principle? So that's my, again, I'm so off topic here. Really sorry, but it's really a good opportunity because it also affects how we interpret Nick Fuentes, but also Nick Fuentes, he's representing a bigger issue. That's why I'm, excuse me. Like if we love our mums, boys and girls. Anyway, I'll end on this point. Anyone who concern posts about someone saying anything positive about Adolf Hitler, but doesn't do the same for people for other brutal tyrants in history, like Genghis Khan, Augustus, Pol Pot, Stalin. Some people do it for Stalin, but nowhere near the same extent. If you don't concern post the same way for those other rulers, shut the fuck up. You're a hypocrite. You have just demonstrated that you're not guided by principle. If you did that consistently, at least, I could grant that you're consistent. You have a consistent principle. It's a dumb principle, but it's a principle nonetheless. But if you don't do that, you've just shown that you have a religious priority for the Holocaust, for World War II history, for what Jews say is okay to talk about and not. That's exactly what it is. Because we Christians treat blasphemy as something pertaining to God, to our religion, to the saints to a certain extent. So for us, it's okay to make fun of other people to a certain extent. Obviously, there's a level of decorum required. But with certain bad people, we can have some fun. We can poke jabs, blah, blah, blah. We can take other people's names lightly. We can't do that with Christ. Why? Because he is our God. He is our Lord. He is transcendent. He is above us. He is our King. We treat him and his name with gravitas, with greater respect, beyond such that he is not to be the butt of jokes. That is what we do. Okay? And likewise, we have tests for orthodoxy in that regard of what you believe about Christ. That is what we do. So then what does it tell you when the exact same thing's done about the Jews, about the Holocaust, about Hitler, this, that, and the other? It tells you it's a religion. And it's a false religion. One that should be, as Nick says, have acts of sacrilege committed against it, blasphemy, because it is a false religion. That's what it is. Anyway, that long tangent over, let's look at what Nick says about race. And so again, here I largely rely on my own testimony as someone trustworthy who's watched Nick for a while. Other people who are self-described gropers in the chat can confirm. TLDR, Nick believes that biological race is a real category and it actually commands a general loyalty from the individual towards the good and preservation of his race. So if you're African, you have a duty of loyalty to the African people and to see their well-being looked after and to see that race preserved. Likewise, if you're European, same deal. If you're Chinese, and with the subcategories below that as well, Italian, Ugandan, Han, Uyghur, so on and so forth. It all works to that. That's Nick's basic view. However, with that, he does also believe that the biological reality of race means that there's differences at a biological level, not exclusively. He doesn't believe that all behavior and all intelligence is biologically determined. He doesn't believe that, but he does believe there is significant biological determinism with IQ and with behavior. He'll say that explicitly, and he's okay with that. And so he's very clear, for example, with Africans, they have a lower IQ, average 65 or whatever in Central and Western Africa. He'll say that openly and loudly. He'll also talk generally about races and racial behavior, but not necessarily because their behavior is biologically determined, but just because that race happens to operate a certain way or act a certain way, even if it's just culturally normed. So he'll talk a lot about that with Africans, for example, with blacks, and I'll actually show a good clip on that shortly. Love your take on this. I am glad the illusion on these topics is breaking. God bless. Thank you very much, mate. Very much appreciated. Yeah, that's my whole mission here. My whole paradigm of how I operate. It's very freeing, is that I'm open and unashamed about what I believe is true. Now, if there's a point where I genuinely don't think I should say my view on something, I'll be straight up about that. I'll be straight up. I won't try to bullshit. That's how I do. Father James, good to see you, mate. Very good to see you. Bro, it's not what he believes. It's just standard truth. Well, that's what this stream is about. It's about Nick. How do you understand Nick? That's what this stream is. So the first example I'll play here is from, oh gosh, I can barely see that link. There we go. All right, is from unfortunately, I did have the clip with me. I had the fuller clip with me, but for whatever reason, I couldn't find it again. So I'm relying rather on a reaction to this clip of Nick by actually some black YouTubers, and they actually give very relevant points at the end, which actually further illustrate Nick. So again, and the stereotype is Nick just hates lesser races. He hates blacks. He hates this and that. No. And this clip is going to show you that, especially the cherry on top being that the people reacting to it and agreeing with it completely are black men. I prefer the old glory carbon men like Pete Quinones and his work in World War II history. They actually have a path to winning, while Nick back said, no, that's not, okay. That's an unrelated issue. That's separate. But to just give my take on that, no, that's complete BS. Nick, his role is very consciously is the propagandist, someone who gives as he sees it, the reality of things as it is, and simply encouraging men to take power, have kids, get married, take power. That's what he's doing. That's essentially what he's doing. And we're seeing the fruits of that. There's many young men, Gen Z, who are like self-avowed gropers, and even many people in certain positions of power who are taking on the same views, even liking Nick. So it's having an effect. He's the propagandist. That's what you do. That's part of what you do. He's not just a backstabber. Anyway, I'll pull up. I'll just make sure. Blah 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 blah. Yep. Okay, and I'll play this clip now. Oh, hang on. Gosh, I love this thing. Oh, look at that. Just these buttons. I don't have to get my mouse and like to click on the different things. I can just boom. I can just boom, 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 friggin' boom. Look at that. I can just click the buttons. It's so cool. I love the Stream Deck so much. Oh man. I'm also gonna make a profile for strategy games I play like EU5. Anyway, onto the clip.
Thank you for the big super chat. I appreciate it.
And World Chamber sent $30. My YouTube feed is full of black people reacting to your content and agreeing with you. Smiley face emoji. Quite endearing, I must say. The blacks love you. Nick.
Yeah, it's so funny. Because I got called a racist forever, and now my monologue about black people is going viral, and all the black people are reacting to it, and they're all agreeing with it for the most part. And, look, it only makes common sense. I'm not a racist in the true sense of like hating other races for who they are, or what is widely considered to be a racist. But I came of age in this politically correct period where if you were white and did not hate yourself and were not constantly tripping over yourself to apologize to or cater to black people, you were called a white supremacist. And I feel like that was the category that I got boxed into. I was never up here just like preaching hatred. That was never the case. And I always got along with black people. I always got along with Bryson Gray. I got along with the Hodge twins. I got along with Myron, Sneeko, Ye. I always got along with black people. I had these controversial views, but I believe I was boxed in because, again, from the time that Michael Richards did that comedy routine where he said the N-word 1,000 times. And like a few years ago, it was so politically correct. Again, if you were not a self-hating white person, you're racist. If you went out there and said, look, I'm white, I'm proud to be white, I like white people, and I have nothing to apologize for, they would say, wow, you're a racist piece of shit.
They would.
They say, you're a fucking white male. You have no culture. Step aside. Your time is over. And, the inverse of that is if you were not tripping over yourself to not offend black people. Like, yes, I have said the N-word on the show. I've uttered that word. I know it's a crime. It's practically a blasphemy. But it's like if you're a white person that doesn't let them control your speech, you're racist. If you're not tripping over yourself to apologize and pander to their feelings about crime or these other topics, you're a bad person. I was just ahead of the curve. I think black and white people have realized that there was this excess. I think we've all realized, like, hey, Houston, we have a problem. We had this narrative 5 years ago that like the police were the new Ku Klux Klan genociding black people by killing them for no reason. And under that assumption, we started to defund the police and let criminals roam free. And now everything's a shithole. And now every night there's a story about an armed robbery, a carjacking, a shooting, a stabbing. We get these videos on TikTok. Never ashamed, they say. And now black and white people are saying, okay, so clearly that was a mistake. Like clearly George Floyd did not get killed for walking while black. He was part of this epidemic of black sociopathy, which does not characterize every black person, but there are a lot of black people that feel entitled and they menace society, or they believe the rules don't apply to them and they commit crimes and they're emboldened. And I think everybody's coming to recognize that's a big problem for all of us. Every law-abiding, decent person is going to say, yeah, clearly racism was not the issue. The issue is that opportunists will take advantage of a situation. There are opportunists who think they're not going to get in trouble for breaking the law. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to break the law. And so it is. So anyway.
Yeah, that's all facts. 100% facts. I don't know how you could disagree with anything in this clip.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way he broke it down. I completely agree. Yeah.
So that's the gist. That's the gist on his views on how he views, well, particularly blacks, but also just how he goes about racial dynamics as well. He doesn't treat, every single person of this race is this quality. He doesn't treat, this race, they're just like categorically inferior, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. I'm not going to associate with them. I'm going to treat them as lesser. He's just, in his mind, according to what he perceives, a realist. That, hey, there's this group, there's this race, and they happen to have this particular behavior, and it's not accidental to them. It's not like it just happens to be a bunch of individuals in that race, as if it's completely unconnected to the collective behavior. No, there is a collective problem in this group. But likewise, that doesn't mean every individual is that way. Doesn't mean that it can't be fixed. It doesn't mean that they can't even recognize the problem themselves. In fact, they can and they should. And indeed, that's why it's actually extra valuable that I found the reaction here from these guys, because look, they are other black men who see the same thing. They completely agree, and that's not my way of saying, guys, look, I'm saying this thing, but a black guy said it too, so it's okay if I say it. That's just a bullshit, cucked, anti-white way of going about social controversy. If no black guys agreed with that wouldn't make it any less true. I don't bring those guys up as validation. I rather show them as basically a demonstration that actually, no, many blacks themselves have the same observations. They see it the same way Nick does, which means that he's not categorically just, I hate blacks, or I'm an absolute racist in the worst sense of those terms. He's not. He's just a realist, and it happens. Many real G's, real black guys, they happen to agree. Thank you, Fuen. Thank you, Fuen. That's how he behaves. So you have another debunking of a common perception of Fuentes, that he just hates other races. Period. That he thinks it's all biological determinists. No, it's not. It's not true. It's simply not true. And it took me so little time to find these clips. Some of these clips I knew of that I'm showing today. At least a couple of them I knew of already, so I knew where to find them. But others I didn't. I just did my due diligence. I just searched for, hey, what has Nick said about this? And I just searched the catalog, found the relevant streams or clips, and it wasn't hard to find. It took me like one night to find the clips that I didn't already know of. It was that bloody. So nobody has an excuse. Nobody has an excuse in this issue. And actually, now, on top of that, on his views on race, there is an additional point, one that's extra spicy, and actually one I weighed on a little bit a while ago. Nick does not like race mixing. Whoa, I know, really controversial. But there's the why behind that. Now, first and foremost, to get to it, the opinion that I don't like race mixing. This is the basic bare bones opinion. Let's say that. Let's articulate it. I don't like race mixing. Actually, no, we'll just let Nick give his own words. There's another clip here for that where he basically articulates his reaction to it in full. So I'm going to load that up now. And this is from his interview with Pearl Davis. Oops, wrong button. There we go. So yeah, clip from a longer interview. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, exactly. I actually mentioned this earlier, Father James. Yeah, he did do that, having edgy racist undertones. Yeah, because again, he was a very normie libertarian originally. So it's really funny to see how he developed. And actually, his change happened very, very quickly. Like by the time of the Groper Wars, the first Groper War, 2018, he was basically what he is today. It's pretty funny. Anyway, so this is where he articulates his views on race mixing and dispels some myths.
We covered the white supremacists. No, we didn't. You don't believe in race mixing.
Yeah.
Okay. You wanna?
Yeah, I mean, what do you think? Are you pro-race mixing? What's your feeling?
I don't
really care.
Yeah, I mean, I guess dated like another race before. You know, it's fine. I mean, it didn't work out. But yeah. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I mean,
you said you're mixed.
Well, I didn't say that. I said I'm Mexican, Italian, and Irish.
Yeah, so that's mixed.
I mean, like kind of. Some would say yeah, some would say no. Because my dad's like half Mexican, and Mexican's not really like a whole other race. So,
what do you mean it's not a whole other race?
I mean, because Mexicans are definitely like closer to white people than like black people, for instance.
Okay.
Or Chinese people. Because a lot of Hispanics have white DNA.
Okay. Tell me why.
About race mixing?
Yeah, why are you against race mixing?
So yeah, because that's really immaterial. But well, I'm just against it because like I just want kids that look like me. I just want kids that have my same features, and I want grandkids that look like me. So I think it has a lot to do with the person's values, because when you are, because like for example, I'm also Italian, and so my mom, like, she's fully Italian. That's like a very strong cultural part of my identity. My father doesn't really have a very strong Mexican or Irish identity. His father died when he was very young. And, and his mother's not like very super like ethnically Irish. She's not like into that, So the Italian thing, that was like the dominant culture in my house. And so that comes with it a lot of things. Also being like Italian and Catholic, that's a big part of it. And so the idea that, like, for example, if I had a black wife, I do actually find black girls attractive. I do, and it's not that I'm not attracted to.
Exposed. He's a race traitor, guys. That's the real problem. Not that he abhors race mixing, but that he's a race traitor. Anyway.
Girls from other races. But if I were to get with a black girl, a black household, totally different. You know, like
you lose some of them.
He is right though. I will admit there are some very lovely looking black women out there. I will absolutely.
The culture is what you're saying.
Yeah, you lose your identity.
So like you're Catholic, and if you were to marry someone that was non-Catholic, that would be a loss in culture because the kids grow up with two different religions in the household.
Yeah, they might not get baptized.
And even if like your wife says we can raise them in your culture, the kids are still going to be influenced by the mother. That's half their right.
Yeah, exactly. And so and the other thing is so on my mom's side, and it was even like for my mother, it was a contentious decision within her household because my mom, she came from this super Italian neighborhood in Chicago. It's like Jersey Shore. She came from Melrose Park, which is like super Italian. And all her friends were marrying Italian guys. You know, and I love my father. It's not, you know, I don't have any like, you know, weird hangups about that. But even for her, it was a big decision because, you know, both her parents are Italian and their parents were Italian and so on. And so for somebody like me, I look at my heritage and my ancestry and like, you know, that matters to me. That's like a value that I share and I want my children to be a part of that. And there's something that is almost lost along the way on both sides when you have that mixing. And so I don't think it's immoral, actually. You know, it's not actually a sin. I'm Catholic, so we don't, in the catechism, it says it's not a sin. But I don't think it's a very wise thing for the marriage. I don't think it's always perfectly compatible. And also personally.
That makes sense. I mean, even if you did, like, I'm Irish and German, like it would make more sense for a German to date a German and Irish to date an Irish. Oh God, they're gonna. Yeah. But just there's less problems when you have more in common.
Right.
Like even if we took it out of race and put it as religion, like a Christian and a Catholic, it's just easier if they're both Catholics.
Yeah. Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's part of it. It's for a lot of those kinds of reasons. But I guess the fundamental thing is it's just about identity. And that also gets to the demographics thing, is that people are not interchangeable. And my identity matters to me. You know, like my ethnic, racial, cultural background, my country. I feel like the whole culture is telling people that these things don't matter. Like, it's almost like a nihilistic thing, like nothing matters. The only thing that matters is you're having a good time. And to me, that's the thing behind race mixing is like, hey, well, you're in love, have a good time. Well, actually, there are things that matter equally or more, or there are also things that are important in addition to that too. Like the household you're going to raise your children in, long-term compatibility, your identity, your heritage. And so, you know, maybe that's just old school, but that's kind of the perspective that I come at it from. And people say, oh, well, what it's about is racial purity. You know, people say you're against race mixing, but your last name's Fuentes, so you're not so pure white. It's like, it's got nothing to do with it. It's not about.
It's more about cultures and values.
It's about, you know, those things I just mentioned. Yeah, it's about a person's identity.
So very clear, very explicit there. He's not some radical racial purity spiraling wignat, as many people like to say. He has very, very fair enough standard reasons for why he doesn't want to. He believes, well, it carries on from his belief that race is a real category. It's a real collective identity. And he simply wants to preserve that. He thinks it's good to actually preserve that. Now, I myself, if anything, I'm actually, well, for one, I'm a more extreme mix than him. Not too crazy, but I'm a more extreme mix than him. Anglo-Australian on my father's half and Lebanese on my mother's half, you know? But even I actually, if anything, I have a stronger view on race mixing than even he does. And if people want to see that, I won't elaborate here. But just look at my debate with the reformed guy, Jay Antello, on his channel, Providence Perspective. I did debate with him on that. And I'm also not the extreme, like, purity spiraling, racial purity, it's evil view that certain idiots are. But I'm also not as light as Nick. But nonetheless, yes, he doesn't want to race mix. He doesn't like it. And he has reasons that are fair enough. fair enough. Nothing sinful about it. Nothing condemned in scripture or in natural law. If anything, it is more in coherence with natural law to intermix with your own people than with other people's. It's very simple as that. And again, as he even said explicitly, not a sin, not a sin. So that's another blah 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 thing. Oh yeah, Stone Cold. This is probably one of the reasons why they absolutely hate him as well. If anything, they're probably part of the whole Nick's crap, because he's like, he's in principle okay with race mixing. So yeah, that's pretty funny. But anyway, with that said, oh look at that, I'm Anglo-Australian on my mother's side and Anglo-Kiwi on my dad's side. There you go, pretty cool, very cool. Now, moving beyond that is the greater elephant in the room, and that is Nick's take on les Jews. Now, I was spoiled for choice on clips for that one. There's so many ones you can do, but the trouble is, it's actually not easy to find just one clip where he gives a very basic TLDR on what he thinks about the Jewish people. It's hard to. It really is extended across multiple different places. So the best one I could actually find is from his Tucker Carlson interview. And even that doesn't go into as much detail as it could, but it is certainly the most representative. And again, I say that because I've watched so much of his content before, and I can attest that what he says there is basically a summary of what he said about the Jews before, and he doesn't have caricatured views that many people impute on him. So I will open that up. And we shall play that.
But I also think there is like a true, not just principle, but like spiritual reality that we have to defend, which is God created every person as an individual, not as a group. No woman gave birth to a community. Like, we hate that kind of thinking, right? Collectivist thinking like that. That's identity politics. That's what Dave Rubin engages in. That's why Dave is like just a child. Like, you don't pay any attention to Dave because he's like shallow. But we're not going to.
And who purchased a baby?
No, I completely agree with you. And, and not to be that guy and say that thing, but like, my best friend is a Jewish person.
It's over. It's over.
I guess here's my substantive disagreement, because as a Catholic, I could not agree more with you.
Yes.
In what you're saying. I love all people, even the ones that don't like us. We have to love them all. And we have to recognize that
we're required to.
Yes. And especially Aquinas says the Jews are a witness people. And so they actually have special protections under the law, according to Catholic philosophy. But I guess my substantive disagreement, which I've said on the show also, is the idea that neoconservatism and Israel has nothing to do with Jewishness, Jewish identity, the Jewish religion, because clearly the state of Israel and the neocons are deeply motivated by that ethnic identity, and their allegiance to Israel proceeds from that. The plan of Greater Israel, the blood and soil nationalism of Israel, it stems from this ethno-religion, which is Judaism.
Well, this is, just BLM, the new version. This is identity politics. They're engaging in identity politics. I mean, that's just so obvious to me. But the problem in your response, I get what you're saying, but the problem in your response is it does not apply to every individual.
No, and I would never say that.
Okay. Well, I just think it's important to say that, not to kind of like dodge the accusations against you. My best friends are Jewish. Like, okay, I agree. Embarrassing, even though it's probably true. And it's true in my case, actually. But whatever. But because just that principle that we're all judged as individuals by what we do, that our faith, the decisions that we make, the way we live our lives, and God will judge every one of us in that way. And that's how we're supposed to judge. Like, I think that's true.
Yeah, and I totally agree. But I guess the disagreement is you say identity politics like it's a bad thing. I think identity is a reality.
Identity is a reality. Absolutely. You just can't have a country of 350 million this diverse where it's just like warring ethnicities, because then it's Rwanda soon. And, the people with the most force just kill the others. So like, you can't have that here. right?
Yeah. But I would say specifically as it pertains to, you, I think, have said it's the neocons. And I think that neoconservatism, where does it arise from? It arises from Jewish leftists who were mugged by reality when they saw the surprise attack in the Yom Kippur War.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of it for sure. But then, like, how do you explain Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and there are a lot like that, John Bolton. I mean, I've known them all, George W. Bush, like Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen like be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. Most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, well, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that?
Right.
And I could just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody. Because like what? Because it's Christian heresy, and I'm offended by that as a Christian.
Hey. All right. So that's the basic TLDR of Nick on the Jews. So most important takeaways there. He doesn't believe that all Jews are equal parts bad and evil. As himself, he decided to cuck himself with the "my best friend is Jewish" type thing. But hey, if that's real, then that is a genuinely good point, because contrary to what some leftists say, well, no, if you have someone who you genuinely consider a friend, you love and respect them, then that ipso facto precludes you from having genuinely hateful views merely on account of a certain race being a certain race. It does. It just does. I'm sorry, but that's real. So there's that. But also he affirms even the Jewish people collectively, we are to love them. We are not to hate anybody, love our enemies. And but ultimately what he is critical of is, and again, there's way too many clips to show that. If you guys want, I could recommend particular episodes, particular portions where he talks about this. Nonetheless, he did pull back a bit for the Tucker Carlson interview, right? Very strategically, of course, because he is getting into a mainstream audience and he wants to communicate his views in a most palatable way without lying about what he believes. So he does much more strongly say in his other content that there is a collective Jewish ethno-religion. He basically said that there were Tucker, but there's a collective Jewish ethno-religion that is fundamentally opposed to Christ, opposed to Christianity, but which also gives a disposition of allegiance to the state of Israel, and vice versa. The state of Israel has a vested interest in the well-being and prosperity and even dominance of Jews outside of Israel. So that's a key thing he points at. He states that with some of the discourse, they're saying that the problem is the state of Israel, it's the secular government of Israel, and blah, blah, blah. Nick's key point on this topic is no, it's not. It's actually an issue of the global, well, what he calls global Jewry. And that's not that's some hate word. No, it's not. It's just a reference to collective Jewish identity and Jewish action. The issue is not merely the secular state of Israel. The issue, rather, to Nick, is that the collective Jewish people have in many instances acted subversively in pursuit of their own material interests, whether it's for a homeland, whether it's for their own prosperity, heavily in-group focused, to the extent of even screwing over other people. That's Nick's basic point. And as he's already said, that doesn't apply to every single individual Jew. It does, however, apply collectively to them, and by extent, many individual Jews, not just members of the Israeli government, not just Israelis proper, but even Jews outside of Israel. And he talks about it a lot in his content. You can find him speaking of the many very blatant connections between someone like Larry Ellison, head of, what's it called again? Oracle, one of the massive tech firms in the world now, one of the leaders in large language model technology, how he's a secular Jew. He resides in America, I believe. He's not an Israeli citizen. I don't think he is. He doesn't reside in Israel. He's a secular Jew, not religious, and yet he has a very strong, close tie with the state of Israel, with Bibi, with Benjamin Netanyahu. and acts towards their interests. Same with Miriam Adelson. Same with what's his face, Barry Weiss. Numerous other major Jewish figures and Jewish organizations writ large. The Republican Jewish Congress. Here in Australia, the Australian Jewish Association, I think that's what it's called, the AJA, the New South Wales Jewish Congress, individuals like Menachem something or whatever, some really cringe Jewish activist in Australia, Mark Liebler, major Jewish billionaire here, who likely had a role actually in overthrowing Kevin Rudd because of his lack of coherence with Israeli foreign policy. Long story behind that. You've got, what's his name? I forgot it. Mark Dreyfus, Attorney General, Australian Attorney General. And he helped spearhead new anti-Semitism legislation in Australia. Same with New South Wales as well. It's from the loud cries of Jewish activists, Jewish organizations that we now have relatively new legislation against public display of like the hand gesture, the Nazi hand gesture, the Roman salute, and swastikas and all that outside of like educational or comedic purposes, among other things. So the point being, Nick points to all these things. He's pointing to it as a geopolitical issue, as a problem with a certain group of people collectively, but he's not therefore saying it's with every single individual Jew. And also he is not saying, therefore, we need to round these people up in camps and do some terrible things to them. That's not his view. He simply pointed out that's a problem and we have to deal with it. We have to make, in his mind, America first, not Israel first. The interests of white Americans needs to be put before the interests of Jews and of Israelis. That's his overall view. Given that articulation, whether it's empirically correct or not, whether it's a correct assessment of the situation or not, is there anything wrong with that in principle? No, there's not. Of course not. It's entirely possible. Nothing precludes it in scripture or in natural law. So, as such, you can't condemn him merely for holding these views. That's very, very simple and specific. Anyway, a couple of super chats here. You're a great American, Paul. I'd love to hear your thoughts on his edgelordism, especially you haven't addressed it yet. Well, actually, that's coming up. Well, earlier I explained the foundation of how Gen Z speaks, like what a lot of people miss, especially elder millennials up and especially boomers, how they just don't get how Gen Z speaks, how their humor operates. It's not operating on their same paradigm, but I'll say a bit more about it afterwards towards the end. Tucker's take on identity politics is wrong. America is in a race war. I mean, yeah, I'd agree, actually. There is a cold race war in the United States, especially the whole H-1B issue. That's made it very, very, very clear, especially the allegiance of Indians in America. I won't say Indian American. They've taken the mask off quite early. They don't exactly have the shrewdness, the wisdom of serpents as Jewish actors do. They're very mask off. Many of the Indian figures in America, which is very, very funny. But yeah, that's basically that. And so again, I just encourage people, if you want to see his more deeper, blunt, in-your-face takes on the Jews, just go to his Rumble. Go to the video section where the individual segments are cut out. You'll easily be able to see where he talks about, like, for example, he talks about the Jewish control matrix, which basically outlines the informal network, and in some cases formal networks, of the various Jewish billionaires, politicians, and all that across the United States, and how they all work towards collective interests and the interests of the state of Israel. So that's the key point there. Now, before I get to the last point, I will put up the banner for one, support my work on my channel. I'll have that up, but also I'll tell people that Q&A is fast approaching. So if you want questions to be addressed here, put a Q : and then your question. Or if you give a super chat, you'll have priority. And even further, if you are a supporter on my channel, I likely won't be able to recognize you in the live chat because often people have different names and profiles between them. But if you go to the link below in the video bibliography on my website, if you comment your question there as a supporter of my channel through my website, if you're a website supporter, comment there and I'll be able to clearly see it and address it. If you're a local supporter, go to the same post, go to where I posted the video just before the stream on locals and comment there. And I'll go through those first and the super chats before going through other questions as a priority measure. Anyway, with that said, and I haven't recognized you, by the way, yet, Van Dyper. Good to see you here. Webben is more moral prot version of Fuentes. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd definitely agree with that. Now, the final issue, I don't have clips lined up for this one, but it's very easy to find them, frankly, is the vulgarity question, right? So there's a vulgarity question of Nick's use of language, swear words, cuss words, certain jokes he employs, some of them very, very graphic, sexual references even. So here's the initial framework. Outside of the understanding that this is just very common for Gen Z, many people don't understand this. Nonetheless, we can address it as a matter of principle. So as a matter of principle, using a swear word like I have in this stream, shit, fuck, etc., those are not in themselves wrong. What makes them wrong is context. Moral particularism comes into play here. Generally speaking, you don't just blurt those words out because that will show a lack of self-control. If you're just out and about and you're just blurting what is in the culture taken to be cuss words, graphic words, and again, that's very key. It's culturally contingent, right? But if you just blurt them out and about, no reason, it shows you have a lack of control of your tongue. And in that sense, it's a sin. Not a massive one, it's frankly not. But it is a sin, nonetheless, right? Less so if you're working construction, you're hammering in something, and you hammer your thumb. And you just let it, oh, fuck, oh, drop a little F-bomb. Again, it shows some that at some degree your self-control has a limit. And so that's not good. It's not the worst thing ever, but it's not good. And so it's not as bad as just randomly blurting it out. Now, on the flip side, there are times where strong language, including naughty words, may be warranted. For example, if you're in disputation with false teachers, public disputation with false teachers, using strong language there is actually good and permissible because it communicates the gravity of the error. It tells the other person, the person you're communicating with, and those onlooking, that, hey, this is extremely serious. And so I'm going to use language that communicates that. And that's why I was very deliberate in this stream. I will stand by every single use of naughty words I've had in this stream because I believe it's been absolutely warranted. This is a very serious topic and it warrants it. And some people need some strong language directed towards them. Our Lord and the blessed apostles all granted this. Christ called, he literally in the same Gospel of Matthew, on the one hand, one of the key passages being, do not call your brother a fool, a moros in the Greek. A few chapters later, he calls the scribes and Pharisees moroi, morons, same word. What does that show us? It shows that there is a contextual difference. All else being equal, in the default, you must default to clean, to amicable language, to not stirring up wrath, as the Proverbs say. Okay? But there may come contexts where such language is permissible, and maybe not even just permissible, but needed. Likewise with the Apostle Paul. He on the one hand says, let your speech be clean, let it be becoming, do not engage in crude joking. But then elsewhere, he'll say, O foolish Galatians, O anoete Galatai. He literally calls them fools, like basically the synonym of moros in Greek. He calls them anoetoi, like mindless people. He literally calls them that. Whoa, that's a naughty word. Elsewhere, he calls certain people dogs, kynikoi. Likewise with our Lord, with the Syrophoenician woman, he insinuates that she's a dog. There's numerous instances of that, like even words like false teachers and what have you. And what those contexts all have in common, people can be like the 14-year-old, I wish I had my fedora here, the 14-year-old Reddit atheist, that's a biblical contradiction. They said to have clean speech and to not use angry words with people, but then they say they call people dogs and they call people whitewashed tombs, blah, blah, blah. It's not a contradiction. It's just basic human operation. Humans don't operate when they hear a basic ethical command. They don't think, okay, that command must be followed to the letter in every single situation. Nobody operates that. That's not how ethics works. That's not how the commands of Jesus work. That's not how the commands of the apostles work. It's an all else being equal basis. It presumes that many of these commands, not every single one of them, but many of these commands take for granted that it's an all else being equal situation. Some of them have a bit of a longer thing. Like, we should be patient with people. We should be patient with those who are giving us a hard time, you know? But eventually there comes a point where you shake the dust off from your feet and move on. Likewise with naughty words, there can come a time where strong language is certainly necessary, and scripture does not preclude that. Just because you hear a command saying where Paul or Peter, because I'm pretty sure they both say this, they say to the local churches, let your speech be clean, don't engage in crude joking. That in and of itself, you can't just presuppose that that's an absolute command, that there is a categorical imperative against naughty language. There's not. That's not how these ethical commands work. They speak of what the ideal is, what we should be pursuing, what you should be most of the time. And yet, there can be situations where you can't do that, where we should actually be much stronger. Like a perfect example of when the Apostle Paul himself says, he says, insofar as it is up to you, live in peace with all men. I think Peter himself, he says it without the qualification, just be at peace with all men, have a good reputation with outsiders. Yeah, that's something we need to strive for. That's a default that we have to work towards. But what about when we can't do that? What about where merely proclaiming the name of Christ brings ridicule across all people? Then we remember our Lord's words, you will be hated by the world for my sake, for my name's sake. So the ethics of Christ, of the apostles, it's not rigid, word for word absolutes. That's not how that works. These are norms, and yet there are exceptions to norms. So in light of that context, I find a lot of Nick's language, a lot of the time, especially more recently, less so in the past, I'll get to that soon, a lot of it's fine. A lot of the times he'll use strong language, cuss words, very blunt analogies, insults, which I think are perfectly appropriate. Because he's not just directing him towards nobody, he'll direct them towards genuinely disgusting and evil people. People like that Jewish Senator Randy Fine, who will make fun and make light of the mass death of Palestinian children. And that's outside the issue of, is Israel committing a genocide? Is it all unjustified? Blah, 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 blah. It's not even that. Whether you believe that or not, there's the mere fact that children have died. Children are dying, infants even. And you'll have a senator like Randy Fine who just, he laughs at that. Or you'll have Lindsey Graham who's calling for more war. We want to bomb everybody, kill everyone we can. Someone who's genuinely bloodthirsty, someone who does not have Christ in his heart. Nick will say all sorts of things about those people. He'll say, fuck those people. He'll say they're evil. They need to be punished. They need to be put down. Well, okay, not by way of killing, but like removed from office. They're disgusting. They're evil. They're rats. They're snakes. They're snakes. They're dogs. All sorts of naughty words, which are absolutely justified and needed towards those people with Nick's public platform. That needs to be made normal. And yeah, Father James, he agrees. Mocking the deaths of children like that is genuinely evil. That shows that you do not have the heart of Christ. Super chat, thank you very much. Another one from JR Got Memes. Doug Wilson's book, A Serrated Edge, is good. I've heard about that. I've wanted to get that years ago, but I just never got onto it. I guess I just kind of naturally developed my paradigm in this issue as I read and reflected on scripture. But from what I've heard, Wilson basically says the same thing. He's very much right. He straight up used the word cunt in reference to certain, like the heretical Lutheran woman. What's her name? Nadia Boltz or something like that. That evangelical Lutheran Church of America woman, false shepherdess, like genuinely disgusting individual. He was completely right to use that term. Absolutely. Blah, 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 blah. So it's like mocking that. So those kinds of words, which is much of Nick's content, is actually justifiable. Then there's the realm of edgy joking, all right? I think that in the realm of edgy joking, there's a genuine fine edge there. There's certain edgy jokes where it's like it's edgy, it's spicy, but it's like no, it's not actually wrong. It's not really. It's too crude. One of the best examples actually is in what Nick said about demythologizing the Holocaust, right? Making jokes about the mythological status of that, making humor about that, edgy joking like that, that's fine. And not only fine, it actually serves a godly purpose in taking down false religion. We should mock false religion that way. We should take those things down a peg. Okay? So that goes without saying. Then you get into certain other kinds of joking, like with Nick's. And you know what? I'll bring this up. This is a good question. What about people make 9/11 jokes? You know, that's a genuinely tough one. This issue here, I'm still not fully certain on it. Why is it that on the one hand, we can tell just instinctually the likes of Randy Fine and other Zionist government members mocking the deaths of dead Palestinian infants or rape victims or this and the other. Instinctually, we know that's evil, that's terrible. But then on the other hand, we feel like it's just a fine, edgy joke to make a 9/11 joke. You know, why is that? Isn't that not the same thing? I guess the difference would be between that. I guess the difference because 9/11 jokes, they tend to be more abstracted. They don't tend to refer to like the direct human tragedy. Like, you know, there's a 9/11 joke I genuinely love, and it goes, well, how do we know that the 9/11 hijackers were not Lebanese? And the answer to the joke is that one, the vehicles found outside of JFK Airport did not have chrome rims. Two, they weren't fighting over the air hostess. And three, they didn't brag about it to everybody 3 weeks beforehand. That's a genuinely funny joke. I think that's genuinely funny. And I don't think it's inappropriate. Because yes, 9/11 is a tragedy, but it's not directly pointing to certain people and saying, ha ha, you died. Ha ha, you fell off the tower and you splattered red on it. It's not doing that. It's making light of like circumstances. And if anything, it acts as like a coping mechanism for many people. And yeah, fair enough. With Father James, you saw 9/11. You hate 9/11 jokes. Fair enough. But even then, so it's a genuinely tricky thing. I still haven't been able to untangle it. How do we seem to somehow have this intuitive thing where there's a certain line with edgy jokes and with tragedies that we can do, but then there's a certain line where we can't. And it's a tough one. Could it just be that we're genuinely inconsistent? Maybe so. But I think there could be a principal difference as well. I think there is a principal difference between having a joke about, why weren't the hijackers Lebanese? Or another example, maybe not that one. just ones like that which are more abstracted. They don't refer directly to the human tragedy versus just looking at a dead Palestinian child and mocking that. I guess that's the difference, you know, because that's not even joking in that case. Like just looking, it's not like you're hearing a joke even about the Israel-Gaza conflict and you're laughing at the joke. You're looking directly at the tragedy itself. You're looking at the death and suffering and you're mocking it. And I will agree with you here. Yeah, psychologically for us, time is definitely the biggest factor. But the problem is with that, I've always had a problem with that. The problem is that, I hate using the term, but human dignity, that doesn't change with time. Someone being murdered 1,000 years ago isn't less wrong and tragic and evil than if it happened yesterday. It's not, because the principle isn't time. Your value, your human value isn't determined by time. It's determined by merely being human. And so, yeah, granted, psychologically, that's what happens with most of us, but I think that's a problem. That's something we need to work off of. We need to have a genuinely consistent principle of proper joking. And yeah, 9/11 jokes that mock deaths. Yeah, like if someone was like, oh, I'm going to jump out the window, get some fresh air, haha, that would be, no, that's genuinely distasteful. That's genuinely wrong. Anyway, in that light, so Nick, in that light, he as far as I know, he doesn't make those jokings. Maybe he did once or twice at some point. I haven't heard them. Maybe he has. He himself acknowledges he's not a perfect man. He's made great mistakes before, including some big elephants in the room I'll get to maybe soon. But nonetheless, he still does make certain jokings that are genuinely not Christian. He does. He has. He's lessened it a lot now that he's gotten older, he's matured, relatively speaking, and he's become more mainstream, and he's been forced to clean up his act a bit more. And he has. Some, year or 2 or 3 ago, he made the very infamous RKD joke, you know? And it was a joke, but he said, raise your right hand, I will RAPE, I will KILL, and I will die for Nick Fuentes. Very obviously a joke, obviously not serious. He wasn't actually commanding his followers to doing that. Nobody took it that way. But a genuinely unchristian, crass, crude joke that a Christian should not and cannot make like that. Because it is the crude kind of joking that shows you have a lack of control of your tongue and you make light of sinful realities. It's bad. That's wrong. And Nick still is not refined on that issue. Not completely, at least. He used to be pretty bad back in the day. Not as bad as many people claim. It wasn't like every single second he was making a sexual assault joke. But he did make a He did make a number of those jokes quite frequently. And it's true, some people make it to cope with traumatic experience. It's certainly not the case with Nick. He hasn't done that. But it's a good point. This is a good point. So one of his most famous, infamous ones, I do generally find it funny, the cooking analogy, where it says, if you had 4 kitchens with 15 ovens, how long would it take to make, how many batches of cookies could you make in 5 years? And it's obviously a joke mocking the Holocaust. Now, I'm fine with that joke, and I genuinely find it funny because it's not actually mocking the victims. It's actually mocking, it's intended to be a joke, whether unironically or ironically making fun of the narrative of that X amount of people were killed over X amount of years with Y amount of ovens. So that's what it's mocking. It's mocking certain claims, it's mocking certain ideas, and I find that genuinely funny. I'm agnostic on the issue myself, very deliberately agnostic until I do a deep dive, which will be multiple years in length at least. Because I'm not just going to read any given Jewish historian who says, this is what happened on the Holocaust. No, I'm going to look at primary sources. But yeah, that joke I'm okay with, and I think it's genuinely funny because it's not attacking the deaths. It's not looking at the deaths and saying, ha ha, that's funny. It's mocking certain claims about that. I think there's a genuine difference. Maybe some people will disagree, but I think there is a principal difference. That might be worth discussion. But yeah, with that being said, nonetheless, that doesn't excuse his other jokes. He has, again, the RKD one. That's probably one of the worst ones out there. You know, the I will RKD for Fuentes, and yeah, it was a joke, but it's crude. It's crude and very vulgar, very unbecoming of a Christian. And he's done other jokes like that before, and since then. And I don't have clips lined up for that yet because it's kind of difficult to find them. But then again, just go to Ben Shapiro's one. You'll find many of those clips. They are joking, but there's genuine crude stuff with them. So if anything, it's some of the easiest stuff to find. Just go to any concerned troller about Fuentes and they'll show you these clips. And even out of context, even if it is just a joke, there's still many jokes that just shouldn't be made jokes. But yeah, so that's the basic gist of the issue. And so in light of that, I'll give a genuine TLDR of the matter. Okay? TLDR. What should we think about Fuentes? Actually, no, there's one other issue. I lean towards him being a repressed homosexual. So yeah, I'll just drop that there. I'll absolutely just drop that there. There was the incident. There was the stream incident where his stream ended and suddenly a bunch of homo videos came up. He claims it's a hack. I think there might be a reason for that. I did hear that some Telegram stuff was leaked that showed actually it was a hacker thing. But that doesn't explain other instances. It doesn't explain the whole Catboy gate. He hung out with that guy with the Catboy ears, very friendly with him. His mannerisms when he's sitting, for example, you can see him like that, crossing his legs, some way he talks. He can be a bit flamboyant at times. But then there's also the big one, what was it, 2022, I believe, where his phone, there was a glitch on DLive, which he used to stream on before he was banned there too. and it glitched to show another window of his, and it showed open tabs with like tranny porn, basically, just straight up. I don't think it showed it directly, but it showed tabs with that stuff on it, multiple tabs that was there. Not to mention certain people he's been around, certain people in his circles being very, like, a lot of truly messed up fetishist people around him in certain group chats of his, and leaked chats of him in that. So in that light, that strongly points towards him being a repressed sexual deviant, someone who's trying to repress it, who openly opposes that, but he is one himself. So I genuinely lean towards that myself. Those are really the two things. With the DLive one, it was on his phone. It was like a screen glitch, basically. Like, people who knew what they're talking about on the issue, they could basically say, yeah, that's an actual screen glitch. It wasn't a fake thing. If you could prove that's fake, that's fine. But I'm pretty sure that's a legit one, not the more recent stream one where a stream of his ended and then a bunch of GP played, but a different one with a screen glitch. And again, multiple other instances, leaked chats, certain associations, the cat boy incident, and the mannerisms as well. All that points very likely towards he has some devils, he has some sexual devils he's trying to suppress. And I think he's genuinely trying to, because he does call out that stuff. He's against those behaviors publicly, but he seems very unable to admit that he struggles with that. And it makes sense, because, like, God, the controversy that would follow that, I couldn't even imagine. So there's that issue, and his improved but still real unchristian vulgarity. Those are the two biggest issues with Nick. Those are the two biggest problems. And so in that light, we should pray for Nick, and we absolutely should, because whether you like it or not, he has a massive influence, and he's only growing by the day. He only just recently passed 500,000 subscribers on Rumble, which is an alternative site, not YouTube, Rumble. And he's going well past that mark already. He has massive influence, and he genuinely, on many of these other issues, he is on point. His political instincts are unmatched by political commentators. He has true takes. He has good nuance with them, even if he fails to explain it properly in a number of occasions. And so whether you like it or not, he has a massive influence in the right. I can attest for you right now, here in Australia, there is a groyper movement in Australia. Even in the bloody country. You can find them in the country. I know that for a fact. So his influence is massive. It is genuinely massive. And so in that light, we should pray that all the skeletons in his closet, they become cleaned up. He fully cleans up his conduct, and that doesn't mean he becomes a little, oh, hey guys, I'm soft-spoken. No, a degree of his vulgarity is genuinely justified, but a lot of it is not. So we should pray for him that whatever sexual sins he's dealing with, that he fully clean up from that he repent of it. And even better, if he could even find a wife and kids, that'd be nice. And pray for his vulgarity, pray that his speech grows up. So that's the overall take with Fuentes. I think he's genuine. He's a genuine Christian insofar as a Romanist can be. His political instincts are on the money, on the ball. He understands Gen Z because he is Gen Z. And so he speaks their language. That's why he's gathered so much of them under his wing, so to speak. And he's communicating to them the deeper political issues and spiritual and cultural issues of our day in a way that so many conservative commentators have failed to do. Absolutely, without question. And so he is a genuine asset in that way, but he still struggles with his tongue, and he struggles with sexual issues, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's the case. If that's not the case, if the incidents are overblown or if there's something I'm missing, mea culpa. But that is my perception. I genuinely believe that. So pray for him. And ultimately, should Christians watch Nick Fuentes? I absolutely believe they should. Even if you don't like his person, how he talks, because he's political. Because A, he is a barometer for Gen Z, for young Gen Z men. Not just them, but especially them. And second, his political takes are genuinely informative. He genuinely forces you to cut past the propaganda of normal conservative speech. He tells you like it is, basically. That's basically what it is. That's basically how he acts. He's genuinely very informative. He causes you to think about deeper issues, about the deeper connections between things, to not look at stories on their surface level reading, to look at what's really going on, what's really at play. That's what he compels you to do. So I genuinely believe that's how people should look at him. And that will be that for the stream. We will now transition, boys and girls, to Q&A. So remember, priority for supporters on Locals. Comment if you're on Locals. Comment under the video post there, so I can tell that you're a local supporter and I can read your question. Likewise for website supporters, comment under the video bibliography, so I can see your questions there and I can tell you're a site supporter. And also super chats, they're going to get priority. And then I'll go to other questions beyond that. And remember, if you're posting a question in the YouTube live chat, it's a Q : then your question, so I can clearly tell that's a question. Now, I'll first look at this super chat. It's not a question, but I think that's difficult for people who don't follow Fuentes to determine when he's joking, when he's not. It's just so edgelord, irony-pilled. I can understand that for certain older generations. It's just, what I recommend is look back at the start of the stream where I explained it. It's about, there's a certain way where there's a certain pattern. He's talking seriously for the long moment, but then suddenly he transitions to much more insane, bombastic language, insane ideas, and he even smiles and giggles. That's a key sign that you can tell that he's being edgy and just joking. And if you and really, it's just a matter of like exposure. It's just like learning a language. If you just watch enough of his content over time, you'll be able to tell. You'll be able to understand the Gen Z mind. All else fails, straight up go to a Gen Z person, Gen Z kid, especially one who watches Fuentes, and just ask him, hey, is he joking here or not? That's one of the easiest things you can do. Okay, got to start that. Blah, blah, blah. Hide that. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen first, and then I'm going to look for questions. Okay, nothing on Locals so far. Let's check the website. Nothing there so far. Okay, so nothing from Locals and website supporters. Become a supporter on my website, by the way. The Locals is still there because I have some supporters there, but I am trying to actually transition out of it and just put it on my website, which is much cleaner, much more customizable. I get more revenue, so on and so forth. Become a website supporter, link below. Anyway, with that, I guess we can just go to regular questions. So, first one, and it's basically what I already addressed. So from Father James, one of my concerns is the edgelordism. It's the whole I will sexual assault for Fuentes jokes. It's a continual display of foolish jesting. Obviously not wrong, not always wrong to joke. It's just that, hang on, I've got to scroll up to it. Sorry. It's just that there are so many jokes like that it's hard to tell what he actually believes, and it seems many believe some of his actual jokes should be taken seriously. Look, yeah, basically everything I said before this, that's basically the answer to this. It's Gen Z mannerisms. Learn the pattern, watch enough Fuentes, you'll be able to tell. But yeah, that said, there is some genuinely crude joking that he does that should not be done. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think he does that RKD stuff anymore. That was genuinely abhorrent. I don't think he does that anymore. Question, do you think the Kirkification jokes are I'm not sure what you mean by Kirkification jokes. If you mean like mocking Kirk's death, that stuff's fucking evil. Absolutely. I literally took a photo of a guy in the city wearing that and I blasted it on Twitter, basically to call him out, to hopefully get some kind of a consequence. It got picked up by the Daily Mail. They published it, which is great. But I don't know if that's what you mean by Kirkification. From Riley, do you think edgy jokes become a negative once it's done out of an evil intention? Because Lindsey Graham's jokes are out of evil, while locker room jokes usually aren't. That's a good question. That does genuinely change the moral gravity of it. So if you're just shooting the yarn with the boys, and just one of you randomly blurts out, like just because you're in locker room joking, we're gonna and I'm not saying I'm saying this, but just something that can happen. Oh, round them up and gas all these babies, blah, blah, blah. Like stuff that's messed up joking, but it's not out of an evil intention. You're just having a crazy time with the boys, you know? It's still wrong, but it's definitely nowhere near as grave as actually looking at death and suffering and mocking that. That is genuinely evil. That is really, really evil. Same questions before. I'm going to need clarification on what Kirkification jokes are. Turns different memes into child. Oh no, those are fine. Those are fine. I mean, if anything, they're most endearing. Like, actually, my favorite of those, the Kirkinator. Donald Trump is Vance is like, then it's like Trump. I don't know. He'll say many things in the different memes, or Trump will just say, "We must deploy the Kirkinator," and then just the thing with Charlie Kirk as a cyborg. They're endearing. They're not mocking his death. They're endearing. They're like, Charlie, we love you, blah, blah, blah. We're going to make you look like an epic cyborg guy who's come back from the dead. Those are fine. Those are genuinely funny. Blah, 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 blah. Those might just be a bit creepy, depending on the context. Okay, I'm gonna keep refreshing in case supporters give any questions because I do want to prioritize them. Still nothing. And still nothing. Okay. Next one. Would you consider having a stream with Nicholas J. Fuentes? I absolutely would. 100%. That would be a banger of a time. I would love to. If anyone, unironically, if anyone is in contact with him and he wants to, I don't know, he wants to talk about the relation of Australian and American politics, if he wants to chew the yarn on Protestantism versus Romanism, he wants to do any of that, even just talk to an Australian guy who's like on his level, who understands him, you know, someone reach out, tell him that I want to talk. So I'm pretty certain he's going to be talking with Joel Webbin. So, hey, Wes, if you're still listening, or if Webbin, you're still talking, put my name out with Nick. I'd love that. How much are the Qatari paying you for this video? Well, they gave me this cool permanent coffee mug. What is it? They also helped me design my new business card, which, oh, by the way, if you don't know that, if anyone still doesn't know that, I have a business card, pretty base, pretty awesome. Though I'm probably not going to go with Vistaprint anymore because they're kind of unreliable. I got a few Qatari bucks. Sorry, it's not Qatar, it's Qatar. It's Qatar. All this stuff. Oh, we need to pronounce it. I'm going to say Qatar still. Sorry, that's just easier. Unrelated to today's stream, but are there any more Prayer Book Society or similar events coming up soon? I'd love to attend a more high church liturgy sometime soon. Yes, there is. In January, go to the Facebook or the Twitter of the Prayer Book Society of New South Wales. They have a choral evensong at St. Paul's in, I think it's at Sydney University, I think, for the feast day of the conversion of St. Paul. So that's going to be epic, super based and trad-pilled. Just go there. I don't have the exact date on me, but you can find it on their Twitter or on their Facebook. From Van Diaper, do you think yelling Fuentes rants at women would be Riz dying alone? Wait, let me read. Do you think yelling Fuentes rants at women would be... Oh, 100%. I'm still trying to learn that art myself. Absolutely. We must deploy George Droid. The Fent reactor is online. Oh no, those never get old. Oh man. Okay, one other concern is that we should conform to the joking culture that Fuentes has. Not that you're necessarily saying that. It would be like saying we need to conform to the general tendencies of people. No, absolutely. If anyone's saying that, they're an idiot. I'm definitely not saying that. I'm rather just saying if you want to genuinely critique someone, you have to understand that context. You have to account for it. That's all I'm saying. Oh, man. Anyway, what more? I actually get paid by Qatar and Israel that way. enlightened centrist here. Step back. Who's your favorite past PM? Gosh, I mean, who was basically the first one with the with Federation and like literally the first thing they did, the White Australia policy with the Immigration Restriction Act? It'd be him, I guess. Oh man, do you think Tucker was always was way too soft in Fuentes? I felt it was mostly softballs. I don't need to be a rage interview, but more pushback from Tuncher. I do think I don't have a problem with that. I actually appreciated that because pretty much all people have been exposed to is just people pushing back on Fuentes. That's been the whole mainstream thing. So if anything, I actually like that Tucker, he chose to just let Fuentes speak and give him a little bit of pushback, but he just largely just chose to let Fuentes say his mind. But the problem I have with Tucker is that he's genuinely inconsistent on this. So he'll let Fuentes speak, he'll let Vladimir Putin speak, but then he'll go like hardcore on Ted Cruz. And to be clear, I actually like that. I do like that he put the screws on Cruz with his put the screws on Cruz. I like that with his basically his worship of the state of Israel, how he prioritizes the state of Israel over his own country, let alone his own state of Texas. I genuinely love the grilling that Tucker did, but it leaves the question: you're inconsistent. You're inconsistent with how you do interviews. People may genuinely be nervous. Oh boy, what does Tucker think about me? Is he going to have a chill conversation with me, or is he going to try and grill me in front of millions? You know, that's inconsistent. You know, like one thing he could do is maybe like, I don't know, maybe like make it like a special hot seat thing, you know, where you go in knowing it's going to be a hostile interaction, but then his regular show is just chatting, you know, like Joe Rogan, more or less. So that's my biggest problem with Tucker. He's very inconsistent in that. He shouldn't be. Is it a sin to say it without the hard R? It's not a sin to say it with the hard R. I would normally say it, but I won't say it here on YouTube just because it could get it taken down. That's why I censored even the non-hard RA from Fuentes. It's only sinful again, it's context. It's a context thing. If it becomes a stumbling block towards a brother, if it causes unneeded scandal, then yeah, that's sin. But the implication is that it's no different for saying the N-word than for saying, oh, a bitch or shit or crap or any other word like that. Even calling someone an idiot, you know, in principle, they're the same. It's a matter of context. So simply saying the N-word, hard R or without, is fine, and it shouldn't. And that's another thing Nick said in one of those clips as well, that he's trying to desacralize that language. Completely on board with that. OMG Moot from Ashley. Ashley, where is your Moid? Why are you here without a Moid guardian? Unacceptable. Good to see you, though. Should we as Australians declare our own white boy summer? Absolutely. Wait, why haven't we done that? Bloody hell, we should. We absolutely should. Mate, we need to get on that. Maybe I should make them up because I'm getting better at DaVinci with editing and that, and I'm trying to actually make an intro for what will be the weekly live stream series on my channel, or fortnightly to start with. And I want it to be really high quality. So I could do that. Ideas for how to red pill boomers about these small hat people. Fundamentally, it's the same with boomers and with anybody. It's about learning, and it's not just you can't just know the general tendencies. You've got to know the particulars of the person you're talking to. You've got to know how they talk, what they respond well to, what they respond badly to. You've got to learn that language. Then you've got to speak that language in return. And it's simply a matter of, how do I package these ideas into that language that they can receive? That's fundamentally what it is. So with a boomer, for example, just to take any archetypal boomer, you don't want to go straight on to like, hey, have you seen all the stuff with the Jews? They actually have the Star of Ramthan. It's not the Star of David. And the black cube on Saturn, and with their Kabbalistic stuff, and what rabbis do with baby foreskin, and what's said in the Talmud about Jesus. They're gonna shut right off if you start with that. You basically have to go Inception on them. The movie Inception is quite brilliant in that it actually does show one of the best ways, one of the most fundamental ways of belief change in people. You can't attack the idea directly. You have to attack some related but more fundamental things under them. So with a boomer, it might be the case of like they love and they cherish and prioritize their Anglo ideals, their decorum and blah, blah, blah. it might just be simply a case of like, well, I love those things, but the problem is it's being eroded because the people who embody those values, they're being replaced, so on and so forth. Maybe not as direct as that, but something along those lines. And then that can actually go into discussions of, okay, how is that happening? Who's doing that? Why? So on and so forth. There's many other angles you can go about it. I'm going to do one more search for supporter questions on locals and on the website. Still nothing. All good. All right. You free boys are lucky. Thoughts on politics? I'm just going to emulate Fuentes here. What a stupid what a dumb question. Who asked that? No, I can't do it. I'm not very good at it. Oh man. My thoughts on Arvol and the return to the land movement, kind of mixed. I mean, the movement itself, I very much like it. It's silly for Nick and others to counter signal it as like, oh, that's just LARPing. It's like, no, we need to multiple strategies need to be employed at once. Both turtling fortification strategies where we create our own spaces as whites or as Christians and all that are our own, while also others go and counter subvert the institutions. You need to do both. So in light of that, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a genuinely good project. It's breaking a taboo and it's going to normalize that kind of thing. Arvol, he's weird. He's like a Platonist, perennialist Christian, where on the one hand he claims to believe in Christ and all that stuff, but then he's like very perennialist. He believes Christ is like manifested in other religions, and even more recently he's talked positively about the rise of European pagan thought again, restoring those traditions. So he's not good that way. I did hear he ankle bites Nick a bit, and that's why Nick had a bit of a crash out against him recently. It wasn't just that he messaged Nick something and Nick just took it badly. It was like, apparently it was the end of a pattern of behavior. I can't confirm that. That's just what I've heard. But yeah, he's weird, but he is doing a good thing. I think the ultimate danger is that it just becomes a lukewarm Christian or even outright pagan thing. I know there's Christians involved in it. There are Christians in those communities. But I think Christians also need to be very intentional with having their own projects where we're white, but we're also Christian. So it's not just like, we don't want just any and all white people. We want to also have the Christian foundation, because our race is our body, but Christianity, the faith, is our soul. That's what needs to happen. And I think, I remember saying it years ago, actually. Yeah, I remember I met like a group of like very explicit white nationalist guys, I think like 2019, maybe even before then. So years and years ago, they were very much like racialist that way, and they lived together, but it was a mix of trad Romanists and outright pagans. It was a mix of them. And my criticism of them from the start, I said it to them directly, like my criticism from the start is that like, look, however far you get with that project, it's inevitably going to fall apart because the differences on religion will come to the fore. That will come. And I've always maintained that. Yes, the more proximate problem right now is demographic replacement. So I'm willing to cooperate with like non-Christian whites and even outright pagans to an extent. But all the time, we can't then just completely drop the Christian faith, because one, it's true. And two, if we do come out on top and we get back to ethnically homogenous lands, the religious question will come up inevitably. And we as Christians want all men to be saved, including those of our own race. So while we're doing the racial stuff, we have to also be as vocal and loud on Christ is King. That's why Nick's really brilliant on this, actually. He's very explicitly, he wants to stop replacement, he wants to support white identity, but he's also very explicitly Christ is King. That's a good thing. That's actually a good thing. Is it cool to call someone in the gamer chat? I'm assuming you're calling the N-word. Yeah, whatever. It's just a gamer chat. Whatever. Blame the Moid. He abandoned me. I'm sure he had good reasons. Oh, man. We have a few questions here. Quite a few questions. I don't know if I can get through all this. We're about to hit 3 hours. I'm probably going to hard stop it at 3 hours. So if I don't get to all of them, my apologies. What do you think of the modern context of love thy neighbor? Do you think the modern view of it is different to what everyone used to believe 100 years ago? I 100% believe that, yeah. We somehow adopted a very analytic, categorical view of ethical command. I talked about this earlier, where some people take the ethical commands on speech as categorical absolutes, where they are acontextual. There is no context in which you can't obey it. But that's just not how the human mind even works, even human language. Like, it's always been the case. Like, unless someone's really clear on it, then when they give you like a basic instruction, it's a general all else being equal thing. But there may be a situation where a higher good is at stake, and so you have to contravene it. And that's the case with love your neighbor. There's that issue with love your neighbor. It doesn't mean you do nothing to resist them at all. When Jesus says, do not resist the evildoer, he doesn't mean literally, categorically, do not resist the evildoer. He means that as a general principle of non-retaliation. But he did resist the evildoer on many occasions. He vocally opposed the authority of the Pharisees and the scribes. He vocally insulted them. He undermined their authority. He literally whipped people in the temple. And how do you make sense of that? Well, it's very simple. In general, you do not repay evil for evil. But then when there are higher goods at stake, like, for example, the public knowledge of the truth and the faith, you do need to resist the evildoer. Or likewise, if you're a father and someone's about to attack your daughter, you kill him. Basically, you go for that. You go for the jugular. I'm starting to wonder if the lines have been blurred to the point where we don't even know what it fully means. Yeah, that's basically what it is. So, and love has the other dimension of like, what is love? What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. No, like literally, what is love? How do you define it? Like, what does it concretely mean? That's actually a future book project of mine, possibly even not too far in the future. It's literally just going to be called On Love, or a treatise on love. I want to give, both to satisfy myself, but also for the edification of others, a fully systematic account of just what love is, what are its various gradations, at what point is it in play, what point is it not, so on and so forth. When I hear a lot about these things, you're talking with the Jews, a lot of it reminds me of the conspiratorial argumentation from IFB Chick Track days. I find the correlations uncompelling. Chick was right. The hell are you talking about, Father? I kid. But no, look, just watch Nick's like deeper videos. Particularly look up, if you go to his Rumble and you like go back maybe a page or two, select videos, and then look up and find the one that says Jewish Control Matrix. That's one good video where he talks in detail about the connections between Jewish actors. And it's not just circumstantial connections, but very intentional, how they all work together for collective Jewish interest to a bad extent. What do you think of Nick's quoting about the race differences as fact in a way that some are inferior with intelligence or morals biologically, kind of using it for his worldview? Well, yeah, those are empirical claims. They could be right, it could be wrong. I mean, from the little I've seen, it seems to be undeniably true that on a racial level, like sub-Saharan Africans are well below, say, Nordic Europeans, you know? And from what I've read in history, that wasn't always the case. There was actually something of an indirect eugenic shift with Europe, with Christianity, with Christian ethics that basically selected for higher intelligence over time. Whereas the same just didn't happen with Africa. I'm not conclusive on the issue because it's been a long time since I've read the studies and I'm not confident in what I know now. But yeah, whatever the truth of the matter it is, in principle, those opinions are, they could be true, could be false. Does he really believe that? Bruh, cringe. Arbol said Hindu incarnations are real incarnations of the deity as well as Christ. Yeah, so basically, yeah, that's just perennialism. Yeah, something closer to Iska's project. Exactly, something like that. Now, I don't think they're explicitly racialist. They are. That is the smart thing with the Heritage American label, where they'll include like blacks and certain Hispanics under that label, and like Native Americans as well, because they were there from the creation of the United States, of the nation of America. But they'll also explicitly say that the center of that is the Anglo people. So they are racialist, but they also soften that a bit with like, well, there's actually something of a coalition with other groups as well. Which, okay, I'm fine with, but I do believe, as a mixed man myself, no irony at all, I do believe a more explicit racialist project is good. Christ is the foundation, whites are the body. Exactly, yeah. With respect to white nations, that's actually absolutely true. Yeah, they do. And to an extent, it's fine. Like, I'm part of the British Australian community, for example. It's the only white Anglo-Australian founding stock advocacy group in Australia. I'm part of it. I've helped them out. I've even written an article for their website. I go to their events. It's non-denominational. There's many Christians in there, and I hope to make that the case. I hope to bring up that number. But they've also explicitly invited what's his name? Tom Russell. Like, who's like a globally known heathen pagan community leader. He promotes paganism, but they came and talked with him just about preservation of European peoples and the importance of that, which I'm fine with. I'm fine to that extent. But I do, and I'm fine with cooperating them to that extent. But in the end, it's going to come to a point where we have to choose one or the other. And I hope, and this is my important thing with Christians, this is why we need to get ahead of it, and we need to disabuse as many of our lay friends and our leaders as possible of the racial, egalitarian, colorblind idea, is that as the racialist movements grow, if we don't have Christians in positions filling up the ranks, becoming primary, the pagans will inevitably fill the vacuum, and there'll be an even harder and bigger problem on our hands. That's why we need to be getting on this now, early, filling up the ranks with Christian, making it explicitly Christian, so that while we can cooperate with pagans for a while, we know that's not going to be a permanent state of affairs. That can't be the case. Hey, Paul, when you're doing the video explaining the commentary tradition, Genesis 9:27, vis-a-vis European custodianship of the church, based, one day, maybe. I have no problem admitting there's differences in races and strengths and cultures can even go as far as biologically. But when you talk about the moral biological traits, I'm out. Well, here's the problem. If you grant that human behaviors are to an extent governed by biology, and that there can be differences between peoples, then you're already there. You're basically saying, you're already admitting that whether it's between individuals or if it's on the level of whole ethnic clusters, racial, continental categories, like the murder gene, for example, which is more, I forgot what it's called, but it's more prevalent in the exact genetic structure, but more prevalent in Africans. Among other things, there's certain genes which will increase your propensity towards certain behaviors, and that will manifest in general racial behavior. That's just a reality. You can't really, you can't really go against that. Whoops. That's just the reality. You can't. Whoops. I was just playing the stream again. In light of the. And I'm just looking at something real quick. Real sorry. All right. Anyway, back to it. Whoops. What did I do? Whoopsie daisies. Okay. Whoops. We're back. Black and ethnic Jews and all races are welcome to visit and join my church, just like Romans, Galatia, etc. But Father, you're not heckin'-based chungus, white nationalist pilled. We need blacks need to go elsewhere. No. Sure, there's specifics, may or may not know about it. But we do, I mean, we can experientially see if there is such a thing as the murder gene. We do experientially see that in like African Americans, for example. They are undeniably a lot more violent and aggressive. I don't think that can be disputed. Anyway, with that said, that is going to be the end. We have just passed 3 hours. My word, I need to eat. I need some chips and chicken, man. All right, so I hope this stream was helpful. I might clip out the major portions of it because it is a very important subject. People need to understand how to look at Fuentes, how to interpret him, how to rightly divide these issues. And so I hope this was helpful. I hope it was a very helpful stream. If it was, make that known in the comments. And if you want to help me make this a full-time gig, because I will say with my current job, there is a chance that there is a decent chance that the contract actually won't be renewed next year, in which case I'm going to be going full send on making this channel a full-on income That'll mean a lot more time on content, a lot more frequent, high quality, etc. So if you want to help me make that a reality, become a supporter at the link below through my website. Awesome good stuff coming up, including a supporter-only essay coming up for priests, priest tier and above. And with that, I hope this is helpful. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a lovely day or evening. God bless.